You are watching the Pan-African Daily TV with Dr. Susan Tata. The Africa we want: unity, consciousness, our culture, our spirituality, our history. One Africa for Africans worldwide. Motherlands calling its diaspora home. Join my voice. Join my team. Join my campaign. Campaign 21 hashtag 1 million subscribers on the Pan-African Daily TV YouTube. Be a volunteer. Apply now. Be the new Africa. Hey, Hotep Akwaba. Greetings to all Pan-Africans Daily TV followers worldwide, and to all freedom fighters and liberators and truth speakers. Now you can see, I'll start by really actually apologizing that we're late. But you know why we're late? We're late because I had to spend extra quality time with Rutendo, my brother, that I miss so much. I mean, it was like, I can't just go live with him, you know, and just share that space. So I think you feel me. And I know a lot of our viewers and followers have the same impression, like Rutendo has been missing the king, the rock. When we shared the flyer, everybody was like, the rock is back. And so we're so happy to have him here today on the Pan-African Daily TV. I know all of you have been waiting and anticipating. A lot of your followers, Rutendo, have been asking, what is with Brother Rutendo? Oh, the first time, the second time that we miss him, we know that he's going through a lot of challenges. We all know this, you know. Who stands up and speak truth to power like you do? Who stands up and embrace, you know, the opinion of those that will not have the courage to be in front to say it? Who stands up and just say it the way it is without politicking, without being professional or anything? Yes, so we are so happy to have our brother once again with us, and we want to find out also how he's been metamorphosing out there on the continent. We know we've been having a lot of feedbacks also, not just on the topic that we have to talk about today, but also in the engagement to Pan-Africanize the whole continent through seeds from South Africa, from Zambia, from Zimbabwe to Gambia. Rutendo is breaking those geographical barriers to do trade in a real professional, in an African style. It is not about zones and free whatever that we are hearing in the political space, but he is doing exactly the job of who are taking credit to say we want to break down those boundaries. He's already doing it. So we would like to also know about that, even though, yes, the topic of today, we want to find out the situation in South Africa today, particularly on the stories that have been parading the continent about our former president, Excellency Jacob Zuma, that was sentenced 15 or is sentenced 15 months imprisonment. And South Africans and also Africans worldwide, we threw out that survey to find out what was their opinion on this sentence. And so we could get a lot of feedback where people are actually, not only South Africans themselves, really saying it is as if justice is a colored thing in South Africa, where really some are held accountable and others are set free. And they actually say where stooges are set free. So today we want to find out exactly what is the opinion on both sides, the pros and the cons, talking about it. We just had also an official statement from Honorable Julius Malema, also, you know, of the opinion it is injustice in this situation out here. But of course, we also have the other opinions that are saying, but I mean, you fought as a warrior, as a liberator, you created that same law, and now you also were a victim to say that no one is above the law. So what is going on? So we want to hear from our expert who's going to give us actually the situation. It seems as if it's not really about, from what we found, Africans are not really about the crime, but they more engage in the status quo of crime and injustice on the continent. Is it about color, particularly South Africa? Why are some people preferential and others not? And so if a crime would have happened like this, not to an African, it would have been considered It's a non-issue, isn't it? So yes, we want to find out why the situation is like that. Are Africans beginning to think otherwise? Do they see color really as one of the problems on the continent? Do they see the boundaries and the disfranchisement of the African actually not in terms of our underdevelopment as an African that doesn't want to develop, but because of these challenges, daily challenges that we keep coming across, that is actually hindering our progress, our justice, our development, our economic improvement, and all that. So I hope all of you are well seated on this short introduction. I want to go back to the studio and find out how the rock is called the rock, how Rutendo Matinyarare Benson the rock, the great, is doing. Welcome, brother. How are you?
Sister, how you doing? It's been a while. And you know, I've been having my challenges as usual about my communication devices being affected, trying to stop me from getting the message that I was born and created to send from going out there. So, but today we've weathered the storm. Today we've been able to come to the show and to be able to give my side of the story about what is happening in Southern Africa.
Mm. Yes. Apart before we go into that conversation, I see a lot of people already saying, "Oh, I hope I'm not late here." No, you're not late, because today is the day that we've been anticipating and waiting for. Particularly when we have, a critical thinker and somebody who will say it the way it is. Things that people don't really find uncomfortable to share, Rutendo will tell you exactly the way it is. Yes. So yes. What is it that, apart from the devices, we've seen even testimonials or diasporas that have been on the continent and have actually been giving a shout out to you for breaking those boundaries to make business even work on the continent? So how you've been managing that? We know about the regulations, but how do you do it?
It's difficult. I think you and I were victims not too long ago. You
Yes.
used to have a page that used to have 300 and something odd thousand people. And we did a show. It was very successful. And then when we tried to do a second show, your whole page was blocked and unpublished just 2 seconds before we went live. So I think when I talk to you, you understand what I'm talking about because you've been a victim together with me. You lost an entire number of years worth of work just because I was coming onto your platform. So with me, I have had my device, my Apple device disabled. I can't make videos. I can't make voice notes. I can't receive phone calls. I had to buy a new device. And I remember we had a day that we wanted to do a presentation about
Yes.
sanctions, saying
Twice.
that we
Twice.
twice,
Not
yes,
even once.
correct, correct. And we have to understand that these platforms are not owned by us. These platforms are owned by the enemy that continues to use imperialism to survive. And we have to understand that the West have to continue to oppress and subjugate Africans for them to survive. It is just what it is, because the resources of this world are the ones that have created the biggest, richest people on earth. The Rothschilds were enriched by the gold and the diamonds of South Africa, Zimbabwe, Rhodesia, and the rest of the African continent. So they need to keep controlling these resources. They need to keep controlling the oil from the Middle East if they are to survive. And it's just what it is. And so that's why when we start talking, trying to conscientize the African mind, trying to awaken the African mind, they will do whatever it takes to keep us quiet so that we do not give a counter narrative to the mainstream media that is mainly Western, that has colonized our people and indoctrinated our people to continue to behave in a way that allows these Western countries to pillage our resources and exploit us. But things are changing. Voices like mine can be blocked, but there's always a way. You know, let me also admit something to you. A guy in the United States called me 2 weeks ago, and he says he had seen a video of you and me on YouTube, and he loved the work that I was doing and wanted to know if I had a civil society organization or some organization and how could he help. And I told him how he could help. We need to spread the word. We need more access to the United States, if they can open doors to Congress. And of course, we always need donations of either financial or otherwise. And then he asked me for our details of the civil society organization, and he made a very substantial donation to the organization. And I was like, and this is the kind of help that sometimes when you're down and you don't know how to get up, people like that keep you strengthened, they keep you energized, and then they give you the little resources you need to keep things going. I appreciate that, and this is what your show does. And I think you know that we have taken seeds to Gambia. The first consignment was taken to Bangui instead of Bangul. And so it now became a fracas with our, what do you call them? Our courier trying to get that from Bangui to Bangul. And so then we had to order a new set of product to go to Gambia, which is OPV seeds. And right now, I think they'll get there in 2 days' time. And that is another person who called and asked for seeds because of this show. Another person did the same in Kenya, and another person has done the same in Zambia because of this show. So I would like to thank you for the job that you're doing here, because it's assisting us to begin to act on what we talk about, rather than just having a bunch of words that don't actually try to do something to change the problem. So now we are able to deliver the solution because of a show like yours. And I'd like to thank you. Oh, and another development is the United States government, its Congress, about a month ago, decided to create what we call an impact assessment committee within the US Congress to try and see the impact of sanctions on Africans. They want to look at how sanctions impact human rights. They want to see how sanctions impact, what do we call it, the dispensation of healthcare on the African continent. And I think we have been arguing consistently that sanctions are a human rights violation, a crime against humanity, because they deprive citizens and civilians of their right to education, healthcare, water, food. And that message has reached the Americans. That message has reached the Americans to a point where they've actually decided to create a committee to investigate these human rights violations that we're talking about. So we are not just talking here. What we say here reaches very important people. And those very important people sometimes take action. So we are going beyond words and beginning to influence policy and beginning to influence change, even in a very powerful country like America, that quite frankly doesn't have to listen to what we've got to say. So big ups to you, and you're doing an important job. And I just wanted you to know that.
Another development from our part, we had a very prominent Zimbabwean American activist. I mean, it's your brother. Everybody, when he came here, Obi Ebugna, everybody was just like, this is the twin brother of another mother of Rutendo that is born out in the States. And you see how we connect. And so Brother Obina is really ready to hold a one-on-one on you on the Pan-African Daily, and we're waiting because now they have a conference on the Afro-Cuba relationship this Friday, to which I'm honored to be a special guest to that. But we are doing this one-on-one, and we would be announcing this to our viewers. He wants to hold a tie on with his twin brother, and you can imagine what. Do you know him?
Yes, well, I don't know him personally, but he is somebody that I adore. I admire him. The first time I heard him speaking about Zimbabwe, and he gave the history of Zimbabwe. He talked about Congo. He talked about how Congo was instrumental in making the American government start to feel and realize that Zimbabwe was a geopolitical threat to US interests, because it was stopping imperialism, where it went into Congo and stopped Rwandan-backed rebels and Ugandan-backed rebels from overthrowing Laurent Kabila, which would have resulted in Congo being divided into 5 separate states. And this led to the Sun City Accord in South Africa, which brought peace to Congo and at the same time kept Congo as one country that is not divided to be easier to loot. This is something that many people do not understand. But Obina understood it, and he articulated it well to start stressing how US policy towards Zimbabwe as this guardian of Africa began to change, and that's how we got under sanctions, and that's how Zimbabwe is where it is today. But he also communicated how they have been very instrumental in putting pressure on the Congress of the United States, and how the Congress of the United States feels that they are losing the propaganda war on the issue on sanctions in Zimbabwe. And I think I just articulated how the Congress has that conceded to start looking at human rights violations or human rights infringements because of their sanctions. These are all victories that have come from a collective work of people like Obina and people like myself trying to create awareness. And that is what we need to continue to do as Pan-Africanists with the little resources that we have. As long as we've got our intellect, as long as we've got our mouths, and as we've got platforms like this, we continue to communicate and push the barriers academically, intellectually, to bring change for the African people.
Beautiful. Congrats. Congrats. We're so proud of you, brother. And of course, like you said, I think it is not only about when we talked about the past, about freedom fighters where Africans like were murdered or always also use this kind of tactics to kill them or to disappear some of them. And that's what could have caused that. But you see that a meaningful change would not stop any voice, and look at the impact that you're creating. So we're so proud of you. We hear all these feedbacks, and we're encouraging all the young people to multiply into the Rutendos million times. That's what we're talking about. So today we want to get into this topic. I mean, I know we'll still have to do a one-on-one on agriculture, which is actually what you're specifying on to keep the continent free from GMOs and to do, you know, actually the organic seed. That's your focus and that's your dream. That's your vision. So many people know you just like maybe an activist for the US sanctions and Zimbabwe, but of course you are that kind of one that say Africa would have to feed itself and feed it healthy. And so congratulations, bro. Now, Rutendo, I saw this post, and that's the main reason of the topic of today, where this post said, the white monster Excellency Jacob Zuma nurtured now wants to eat him. I just want to get when you hear a word like this, like they bite the finger that fed them, and you want to relate it to the stories that we are hearing on the continent of South Africa, I just want to get an honest opinion from you on this. Over to you.
Thank you. I did a commentary on the Zimbabwe Broadcasting Corporation, an entire commentary in which I was talking about the scenario between Jacob Zuma and the Zondo Commission and its implications and its border implications on what is happening in South Africa. And in that particular interview, I articulated that what is taking place in South Africa right now is a fight between the apartheid order that seeks to continue to press its control of the South African economy, its maintenance of apartheid under Black leadership, to the extent that they are willing to sacrifice liberation fighters and any people within the ruling government or ruling party who want to seek restitution, who want to seek to break the apartheid order for Black people to get back their land and to transform the economy of South Africa, which has remained an apartheid system. In fact, the apartheid system, which we usually say rests with the Broederbond and the Freemasons of England, has become stronger. It has made more money, it has become more powerful, and it no longer bears political responsibility for what happens in South Africa. So it has become such a force that controls the economy, controls the judiciary, it controls the systems of South Africa to an extent that it is very much still in charge. And because of that, what is happening in South Africa is very much an issue for the rest of the African continent. And a lot of South Africans are very quick to ask that, you're a Zimbabwean, so why do you talk about South Africa? What has South Africa got to do with you? And even though I might say I'm a taxpayer in South Africa, I live in South Africa, I'm a resident in South Africa, they don't listen to that argument. Hence, I had to then point to this article that I commented on Jacob's Room to say that apartheid was a system that was defeated because of the wars that were fought in African countries.
Correct.
Apartheid was not defeated by the marching and the necklacing of black people in South African townships, because white people didn't care about that. White South Africans didn't care about black people killing each other. White people in Europe didn't care about black people killing each other. What they cared about is economic control of South Africa, which was beginning to slip away after the apartheid government lost its wars in what were called the border wars of South Africa. Now, the border wars of South Africa were wars that were fought by the South African government with the assistance of the CIA, the Europeans, and Israelites, and a number of other white races in the world who came together to support the existence and standing of the apartheid government by fighting the SADC nations that were fighting against apartheid. And I need to make a clear distinction here. The whole of Africa fought apartheid. The whole world fought apartheid. But the only countries that fought wars, physical wars, hot wars against the apartheid government, and cold wars against the apartheid government were the SADC nations that surround South Africa. And these nations had to fight a war by force, in the aspect that the very nations of SADC started getting their independence. And the moment they started getting their independence, the first thing they started fighting for was for the liberation of Black South Africans. And so when Mozambique got its independence and brought down the Portuguese government and its colonial entity, together with Angola, because of a coup that also happened in Portugal, the system of colonialism began to fall in the Southern African region, and that was a concern to the Americans. Henry Kissinger even wrote a document that was called NSSM 200, in which he was saying this defeat of whites, the defeat of the Portuguese in Mozambique, and the defeat of the Portuguese in Angola was a huge threat to whiteness and white supremacy the world over. Because if they continued to be defeated in that manner, this was now going to start to radicalize Africans, to remove white people from the African continent. And the particular problem for them was the removal of white people in Rhodesia and finally in South Africa. So because of that, because of this NSSM document, the United States began to have a silent policy of supporting, first of all, the Rhodesian government that was colonizing Zimbabwe as a protection or a barrier to prevent the fall of the apartheid government and the apartheid system, which was presiding over the country that had given the most riches to the Western world in terms of gold, diamonds, platinum, uranium, and other metals like chrome. So they could not foresee a situation where Rhodesia would fall, Zimbabwe would be liberated, and then this would then fire up South African liberation fighters to then join hands with their partners in the SADC region to fight apartheid and defeat it, like what was happening to Angola, Mozambique, and now Zimbabwe. So the thing that happened is that the moment that the ANC became banned, and the moment they decided, together with the PAC, that they were going to fight apartheid and they were going to go military, they began to sabotage, they began to bomb fuel sites in Sasol. So they began to do things to try and fight the apartheid system by actually undertaking military activity. Now, this is a very powerful government that was sitting in South Africa, but these guys began to bomb Sasol. They began to bomb fuel depots, and this began to become a threat to the South African government. So the South African government convened a meeting in 1979, and they said, listen, it seems like the ANC is going to now start doing what it is that the Rhodesians or the Zimbabweans are doing, liberating themselves by arms. And so we need to make sure that we begin to tighten up our war against the ANC and our war against all the black states that are becoming independent around us by creating what is called the total war. Now, the total war was going to be a strategy where they were going to fight a war that was going to be political, economic, and military to try and bring down or to try and subjugate the states of Southern Africa. Their fear was, unlike Mozambique, unlike Rhodesia, which the liberation fighters of those countries fought on their own, but got support with bases from frontline states. They feared that this time around, with a powerful country like Rhodesia becoming independent, it had the infrastructure and the finances and a system, an economic system strong enough to actually start galvanizing a fight where they would join the liberation fighters of South Africa to fight in South Africa. So this is why this institution of apartheid came together and made a decision to bring in its business wing, to bring in its companies, to bring in its state enterprises, its military and government and politicians together to form the State Security Council of South Africa. That State Security Council of South Africa would then begin to implement a strategy of, number one, inviting all the African countries in SADC to form what is called the constellation of states, or the constellation of Southern African states, in which these countries would form a union like the EU, and this would be seen as Africans in the region accepting separate development, together with the Bantustans in South Africa that had already accepted to self-govern and leaving the white South Africans to govern themselves in South Africa. And so had the Southern African states accepted this, it would have been a political victory for apartheid, because the apartheid would have gone to present it at the UN as a union of nations of different races that have agreed to live separately together. But the Southern African states understood that this is not the case. They understood that there were millions of South Africans who were being oppressed. They understood that the whites had cherry-picked the areas with the most resources and the most wealth. They were using slave labor from the Bantustans, slave labor from their own people who were living in South Africa, black people who had no rights, no services, and no humanity. So they refused to join this CONSAS. That refusal of joining CONSAS automatically meant they went and formed their own unit that was called SADC. Now, this Southern African Development Community was then created to, first of all, unite Africans to assist Black South Africans to fight for their independence. It was created with another objective of supporting liberation fighters from South Africa to be able to get refuge, to get camps, to get training and assistance to seek their own liberation. And it was also created to break the monopoly and dependency that was on the South African economy by all SADC countries when they were colonized by the Portuguese and the English. They all depended on the South African economy for their telecommunication, for their ports, and for many other issues, their banking and financial system. So SADC was formed to break that, because the argument was, if we break our economic dependency on apartheid South Africa, we can then effectively fight apartheid South Africa and bring it down. So this refusal of these African states to form CONSAS, and then for them refusing to legitimize apartheid, and then making a statement by creating SADC that was going to fight the apartheid government and support the liberation movements. The South African government, in cahoots with the Israelites, with the Americans, with the European Union, at that time it used to be called the EEC, together with a number of other fascist white states across the world, the Australians, the Canadians, they decided to sabotage and to help the South African government to sabotage SADC countries economically, militarily, and politically for them to be able to sustain apartheid. So this is how they started going into countries like Swaziland, bombing Swaziland. Their commandos would go in there and attack homes in which ANC and MK veterans were staying, PAC veterans were staying. They'll go into Botswana, they'll go into Lesotho and do the same. In Lesotho, they even created an armed wing called LLA that was what you call it, a rebel force that was supposed to destabilize Lesotho from inside. The strategy that the Boers decided to use, or the apartheid government decided to use, was, let's not just fight a war with these countries. Let's destabilize them. Let's cause them to have internal problems, divide and rule. Let's create rebel forces and movements in their countries. They fight each other, and that will cause a belt of destabilization that will then insulate us from attack, because they'll be busy fighting among themselves. So in Rhodesia, before Zimbabwe got independence, the Rhodesian forces were fighting our fathers. They were fighting a war against our fathers who wanted liberation. So they got a few Zimbabweans out of Zimbabwe. This is the apartheid government together with the Rhodesian government, and they created a military wing that was called Renamo. Renamo was then sent, armed by the CIA, armed by the South Africans, armed by the Europeans, secretly, of course. They were sent to go into Mozambique to disturb the fight that Samora Machel and Frelimo were having for their independence against the Portuguese, and at the same time to disturb the Zimbabwean forces, or the liberation forces that were coming through into Zimbabwe. And with that, when the Portuguese were defeated by the Mozambicans, and then Zimbabwe also got its independence 4 years later, the South Africans went and took that unit, brought it into South Africa. It comprised of Zimbabweans. And then they went and took some black Mozambicans who were not happy when Frelimo got independence because they were not included in the government. And they took those and began to train them at a place in Limpopo to fight in Mozambique. So remember, LLA was created in Lesotho, was causing destabilization in Lesotho. Now they had Renamo, which was causing problems in Rhodesia. Rhodesia gets defeated, so the apartheid government takes it and puts it in Mozambique, to stop Mozambique from supporting a fight against South Africa the way they had supported a fight against the Rhodesian government. In Zimbabwe, they also took people who were disgruntled by the independence, people who were in the division that was opposed to ZANU-PF, who lost elections. There were some disgruntled members in there. And I want you to get this, some disgruntled members, not everybody, who were not happy that they never got positions, that began to try and seek a way to start a new liberation struggle to fight the new black government. The apartheid government recognized this, together with the Rhodesians who were inside. They immediately took those people, brought them into South Africa, and began to sabotage Zimbabwe. They began to bomb Zimbabwe. You would have security people who were brought into Zimbabwe under reconciliation, who would be part of the Rhodesian government, sabotaging, bombing the ZANU-PF headquarters, trying to kill the leadership, trying to kill Robert Mugabe. 3 times they tried to kill him, and so forth and so on. This is what the Boers were doing. I'm giving you this history, sis, because it needs to show you how Jacob Zuma becomes complicit in creating the monster that is eating him up today. So it's important for us to understand, what is this monster? Where does it start from? And how did Jacob Zuma nurture the same monster that is now biting? So you can already see the hand of the Boers in Mozambique, in Swaziland. In Swaziland, they actually created a coup to allow a leader that was more friendly to the Boers to come into power. And in Lesotho, they created LLA. And in Zimbabwe, they created this unit that was called Super ZAPU. Now, Super ZAPU was from some members who were in ZIPRA and ZAPU, that was fighting the liberation struggle alongside the ZANU armed wing that was called ZANLA. These guys were disgruntled because they didn't get positions, began to feel that they should start another civil war and overthrow the government of Zimbabwe. The Boers collected them together with their Rhodesian counterparts, brought them into South Africa, began to train and arm them to go and destabilize Zimbabwe. But their role now was to go into Zimbabwe, kill people in Matabeleland, where Nguni-speaking people live, to try and create an impression that the government of Zimbabwe was trying to undertake a ethnic cleansing. That way, they were expecting us to start a civil war between Ndebeles and Shonas, who were the predominant groups, that would then cause them to have a situation like Congo, a situation like what you've got in Cameroon. That's what they were trying to create. They had successfully created it in Mozambique. And they had also successfully created it in Angola, where UNITA was created, FNLP was created, and MPLA, which was the governing party, these other two parties were trying to remove MPLA. So the Boers were supporting UNITA and FNLP together with the CIA in Angola with this civil war. They were doing it in Mozambique, they were doing it in Zimbabwe, and they were doing it in Lesotho. And this kept the entire region in conflict. The Zimbabweans were pulled into the Mozambican side of the war because Zimbabwe is a landlocked country. It doesn't have access to port. So when it needs a port, it needed to use the Mozambican port. And when it needed fuel, it needed a pipeline with fuel tanks in Mozambique and Beira that would bring fuel to Zimbabwe. The South Africans, through Anglo-America, that had a company that used to do freight clearance for Zimbabwe in Beira, that company and its directors began to spy to the South African government and its defense forces that we know how the tanks work, we know where the pipeline is, you need to sabotage it. So the South African government sent mercenaries and its commandos into Mozambique at night to go and sabotage the fuel tanks that used to keep fuel for Zimbabwe and Malawi, and they bombed those on the advice of employees of Manica Freight that belonged to Anglo-America. Anglo-America did this as part and parcel of the State Security Council agreement that South African private companies would assist the South African government in fighting an economic war, and even in this case, assisting their military to hit military targets. Anglo-America did this to support whiteness, but more importantly, they did it because once Zimbabwe didn't have fuel tanks, it would have to depend on fuel from South Africa, and Absolutely. That fuel from South Africa would be carried by one company that was called Freight Services that belonged again to Anglo-America. And Zimbabwe, once it lost its ports in Mozambique, it would be forced to have all its exports and imports go through South African ports in Durban, because they also then blocked a road that goes to Maputo called the Chikaula route. They made sure that the Renamo bandits destroyed and closed that road so that Zimbabwe's freight would only come through South Africa. The company that would then clear all of Zimbabwe's freight and all of Zimbabwe's exports would be Manica Freight that belonged to Anglo-America. But it would also be another company that was called Ren Freight, that was SAS Marine, that was bought by Old Mutual. So all these companies were sabotaging Zimbabwe for their own economic benefit, but for the maintenance of whiteness as well. They knew that by breaking Zimbabwe, which was the strongest country in the Southern African region, they would stop Zimbabwe from defeating apartheid or assisting other southern countries to defeat apartheid, and would force dependency on the South African economy so that white capital would maintain apartheid in South Africa. So Zimbabwean forces were forced. Now imagine Zimbabwe has just gotten independence. We've just finished getting our independence, and in 6 months of getting our independence, the South African government starts attacking Zimbabwe. The first thing they did is they asked for 25 of their locomotives that they'd given to the Rhodesian government. They asked for them to be returned. From there, they bombed a barrack in a place called Cranbourne. They bombed the ZANU-PF headquarters. They bombed Thornhill Air Base, destroyed about 30% of the aircraft there. They were weakening Zimbabwe so that it would not be a threat. We're just getting our independence. They start attacking in Mozambique. Our soldiers have to be taken just 3 years into our independence, and they have to be sent to Mozambique to go and fight a war. While they're also fighting a war in Zimbabwe itself against this terrorist organization that was trying to cause a tribal war. So this is the context of the border wars that were being fought by the apartheid government to try and sustain itself by keeping our armies busy, by depleting our coffers. Because remember, when Zimbabwe took its country, it had the debts of the colonizer to take up, it had a destroyed country to build, it had black people who had been left out of the economy for 90 years to take out of poverty, and it had to go and fight a war. So all this began to whittle away the money of Zimbabwe. In Mozambique, it killed 100,000 people. In Zimbabwe, it killed thousands of people. In Angola, it killed over 500,000 people. These wars combined killed over 600,000 Southern Afrikaners to give South Africa independence. When the Boers lost the war now in Mozambique, and they lost the war in Zimbabwe, they now were beaten by the Cubans, because what the MPLA in Angola discovered is that the Americans were helping the apartheid government. They had gone through a company like Anglo America to give the South African Boers some of the best military equipment in the world that was coming from the United States, Canada, and Britain. And they had used that to assist the Boers. So the Angolans went and reached out to the Cubans. The Cubans got weapons from the Russians, and they joined the Angolans. And this defeated the Boers on Angolan soil. So what happens now is that South Africa is now losing this border war. And it's now losing the confusion or destabilization that was protecting the apartheid government. So already when Mozambique wins its war, Zimbabwe wins its war, there's no longer any destabilization in that part of the world. So that means that the next place where the war is going to come is South African soil. Now MK fighters, AZAPU fighters could simply join hands with these other countries and launch an attack on South African soil, as it happened in Mozambique, in Angola, and Rhodesia. And we all know how those wars went. So when they get defeated finally in Angola, they have to retreat from Angola. Then they have to retreat from their all-time colony that was called Namibia, and they have to come back to South Africa. Once they're in South Africa, they are left with the specter that the entire SADC region is now going to attack. And when they attack, they're going to defeat them. It was inevitable. They've already been defeated in Angola. They've already been defeated in Mozambique. They've already been defeated in Zimbabwe. It was inevitable that they were going to be defeated on their own land, particularly once these liberated African countries begin to arm the Soweto youth, the ghetto youth, who had been fighting with stones and had been brave enough to go against the military with stones. Imagine when they've got AK-47s in their hands. So the writing was on the wall. The apartheid government was finished. It was under sanctions, so it was broke. It could not borrow more money to keep getting these arms that Anglo America had been purchasing for them. They had nuclear weapons, but if they chose to use their nuclear weapons on any African country, the Russians would also be able to use nuclear weapons against South Africa. So it was a stalemate. Now, when white South Africans give a narrative about this, they say that the apartheid government fell or didn't fall, it just negotiated itself out of power. No one negotiates it themselves out of territory. And then they come home, they negotiate with the ANC. And the ANC, after winning power, could have decided to take everything that the Boers had. They could have decided to nationalize everything. They could have decided to take all the land, and they could have decided to jail all the apartheid government officials. So they lost the war. That's why they negotiated. Now, here is where Zuma comes in. The frontline states, the SADC states, together with the economic pressure that was put by the rest of Africa and the economic pressure that was put by the rest of the world, had left South Africa in a very bad state. You would come to Durban. Durban was, it looked like a shanty town. You would go to Cape Town. Cape Town was derelict because the apartheid government was running out of money to fight the wars and to look after its own people. So it was a matter of time before it was going to implode. So they realized that their only way out of this was to negotiate with the ANC. They deliberately did not want to negotiate with the countries that had defeated them. They deliberately did not want to negotiate with the countries that had lost 600,000 people and over $120 billion to defeat them in the border wars. They pretended like they had just decided to be nice. So they come, they say, let's have negotiations. Instead of all the liberation movements and parties that were fighting apartheid coming together onto the table, the PAC, Inkatha, ANC, and everybody else who was fighting from internally and externally, the apartheid government, the Americans, the Europeans, and the West decide to make the negotiations about South Africa, about ANC and the NP. And the ANC accepted that kind of an unjust situation. Hence, the Boers then used that disgruntlement that was caused to people like the Zulu, like the Zulu kingdom, to then start arming Inkatha to fight for their right to be at the seat of that table. But at the end of the day, the negotiations were still going to be predominantly ANC and MP. That is the very first mistake that was made. The second mistake is that they were negotiating not with the comrades who were on the streets in South Africa, not with the comrades who were being arrested for fighting apartheid from the streets of South Africa, not from the comrades who were in the trenches, who were fighting the wars in Angola, who were part and parcel of the people fighting in Rhodesia, part and parcel of the people that were fighting in Mozambique. They decided to go and get the man who was in prison, who had no power, but who was under duress to get out of prison, Nelson Mandela, and they negotiate with him. While all this is happening, Jacob Zuma is quiet. When the PAC and other parties are removed on the table for there to be a negotiation with the ANC, Jacob Zuma is quiet. And he knows that these negotiations are being had with the ANC only so that the ANC can give compromises to the Boers that would be suitable for protecting the Boers when there's a new country. Chris Hani was vocal to say, this is not what we fought for. I fought in Rhodesia. I fought in Zimbabwe. I was arrested in Botswana, which was under pressure to arrest me because they were scared to get bombed by the apartheid government. I did not see my brothers and sisters die so that we negotiate with these Boers without taking what we went to the liberation struggle for, taking the land, redistributing the wealth, making these people pay reparations. Chris Hani was killed. Jacob Zuma kept quiet when Chris Hani was killed. When the CODESA negotiations began to happen, they were had in private and in secret, and there are still clauses and sunset clauses that no one knows about. Yet the independence and victory for South Africa's independence was a collective effort and was paid for in the blood of Africans. But when the ANC began to negotiate, it did not tell these Africans who had sacrificed their countries, their economies, who had gone straight out of independence into financing wars to liberate South Africans. They did not tell them what they were agreeing with the Boers. So instead of sticking with the agreement, you take power, you destroy the apartheid companies that used to destabilize the African countries, you distribute that wealth to your people, and of course, at some point, I'm sure, redistribute some of the reparations to the African countries that were destroyed by the wars for the liberation of South Africa. The ANC did not do that. Jacob Zuma was among those that made sure that the Boers remained protected. The ones that decided that the Boers will not be put in front of courts for their crimes against humanity. The Boers, through institutions like SAIMA, people like Walter Basson, had actually had a program to infect Africans with the HIV virus, and they had done a good job of making sure that Southern Africans are infected by the HIV virus, including people in Zimbabwe, in Zambia, and so forth, through this SAIMA institution and its NGOs that it had created. Southern Africa has the highest HIV prevalence in the world today because of the direct activities of the apartheid government. The ANC forgave those apartheid agents who caused these crimes upon our people, crimes that cost us money today and destroy our fiscuses today, to negotiate with them. Now, someone would say, yes, the ANC negotiated with these people for reconciliation. If only they had not, if only senior ANC officials had not taken shares in these apartheid companies that once bombed our countries, once financed these wars that killed 600,000 people and more, maybe we would have accepted that. But they took shares in criminal entities that were destroying our economy. They took shares in these companies and kept these companies like Anglo America, Old Mutual, the Rupert companies, Sanlam, and the companies that control the monopoly of South Africa. There's just 6 of them. They took shares in them, kept them alive. Now, if you understand that the objective of the apartheid government was to maintain white control militarily, economically, and politically on SADC and Africa. You need to understand that even though they were defeated militarily, if you kept their companies alive, if you kept their broadcasting institutions alive to continue psychological warfare on our people, if you kept their companies and banks alive so that they could continue to sabotage our countries economically, it would mean that apartheid war was not finished when we got independence in South Africa. It continued and continues till today, because this economic weapon of the apartheid government, this economic weapon of the CIA, this economic weapon of the EU is still alive and is still destroying African economies. The apartheid military wing created what were called private armies, like executive outcomes, that continue to destabilize Africa, that continue to cause coups in Africa, that continue to topple governments in Africa, that continue to destabilize Congo, so that Glencore can continue to get what it wants, Anglo-America can continue to get what it wants, and other thousands of South African companies that have Anglo-American backing and white capital backing and European backing continue to pillage Congo and other African countries for their mineral resources. They continue to cause instability in places like Liberia for the diamonds. Jacob Zuma was part and parcel of the ANC that made the decision to maintain the apartheid legal system, apartheid companies, their control of the economy, the growth of these companies in a new South Africa, and the judges of apartheid who continue to sit in the courts, and the writing of a constitution that was written with the intention to maintain apartheid and maintain white wealth protection at the expense of Black South Africans. And my issue is Jacob Zuma was complicit with this, because when you are sitting at the table where these negotiations were having, he also wanted a share of what it is the apartheid government was giving. Him and all the other comrades that are called radical economic transformation today wanted some of the white cake for themselves. And when they didn't get part of the white cake, they used the only means that they had to access wealth in South Africa, the tender system. And I don't blame them for that. I don't blame them for that, because once you don't have restitution from a crime that dispossessed people, and if you don't have restitution in a capitalist system that is built by primitive accumulation, which basically is corruption. Primitive accumulation is taking public goods and taking them and putting them into the hands of a few in what is called primitive accumulation, so that you disempower the people who you take the property from to force them to be cheap labor. That system was maintained, and by maintaining it, it means that anybody else who wants to create wealth in South Africa must also undertake primitive accumulation or corruption in order for them to make wealth, because the South African economy, the Zimbabwean economy, the African economy is all built on corruption of capitalism. So that's what they started doing. Okay, the whites won't give us shares in their companies. It's fine. We will now go and get tenders. We will use our political influence to get tenders. And people try to make it sound like that's weird. It's not weird. You use your you use social capital, right, to get wealth. You use your power and proximity to decision making to make wealth. Now, the ANC are decision makers. They don't need to go to someone and create social capital. They are the social capital, so they can make wealth from the resources of this country, because the wealth of this nation is built that way. So they began to make money. The whites didn't like it, because if they continue to make money, these blacks, that way, they're going to get access to power, access to economic power. They can take money and go to court and challenge this illegitimate system. They can take money and begin to build their own companies, which would be ultimately be supported by blacks. So the whites began to create a system of criminalizing black people who want to get wealth this way. So they began to criminalize people like Jacob Zuma, calling him corrupt for any suspicion or any signs of him seeming to be benefiting from the system other than what the whites are willing to give. And the whites had decided that they're not going to give Jacob Zuma, for whatever reasons, that they felt that Jacob Zuma and the people who formed radical economic transformation must be left on the outside. They empowered certain people. Some people say the people who were empowered were spies. Some people say that the people who were empowered were people who were always friendly to the white system. We don't know. But the white system selected who they were going to involve in their crime and consumption of the loot of apartheid, and who they were going to keep on the outside. They kept people like Jacob Zuma on the outside. We say, by the time Jacob Zuma left a situation where there was a division of wealth that did not belong to white South Africans with a few black people, they already had betrayed the revolution. They had already betrayed the majority of South Africans who are starving, hungry, have to fight and murder each other to survive daily, while the wealth of this nation that has made the Rothschilds the richest family in the world continue to be rich. So this wealth that could have made every South African rise up was kept in the hands of a few with the complicity of the radical economic transformation guys and Jacob Zuma. These companies that they made, that they protected, continued to go back into the SADC countries that they destroyed on the back of the ANC, where the ANC would go to SADC comrades and say, comrades, we've got an economy, we've got a common wealth here. So our companies must trade like all other companies. The ANC knew that the companies that they're bringing on their backs were the same companies that were destroying SADC during the war of apartheid. And because apartheid had not ended, because this economic weapon of theirs is still alive, they knew that these companies would continue to destroy SADC and Africa. So when that's why you see when Woolworths goes into Nigeria, when ShopRite goes into any country in Africa, they want to bring South African goods with them at the expense of local producers in that country. In Zimbabwe, Implats goes in there with Impala Platinum, goes into Zimbabwe as Zimplats, and they mine our chrome, our platinum. And instead of processing that platinum in Zimbabwe, separating the 7 platinum group metals, and then paying our government for whatever it is that is gotten out of that ore, they take raw ore to South Africa. And in that raw ore are minerals that have not been declared, 7 PGMs, gold, and many others that they take out of the country without declaring. So they enrich themselves with that imperialism, transfer pricing. Their banks are utilized to launder money out of our countries into the South African economy for the benefit of white South Africans and black South Africans who get jobs, who get their economies going while our economies are being destroyed. Then the same brothers and sisters will say, why are refugees coming to South Africa? When the sanctions were imposed by the United States, South African banks were complicit in assisting white Rhodesians, the farmers who had robbed our people, who had raped our land, who had raped our resources, who were pretending like they were farming when they were actually mining gold and mining resources that they were not declaring, who were mining diamonds without telling our government that they were mining diamonds, were then able to take over $4 billion out of the economy in less than 2 weeks. They were helped by South African banks, South African financial institutions. And that's how the wealth got here. Till today, money laundering is done with the assistance of South African financial institutions. This destroys Zimbabwean economy and benefits an ANC economy that is helping to destroy the same countries that assisted it to get independence. And then refugees run from those countries because of sanctions, because of the economic sabotage caused by their companies, the unfair competition caused by companies that were grown by unjust enrichment of apartheid. And then the South Africans want to beat and kill Black Africans who are trying to survive by following the wealth that ran out of their country. And when those Black Africans are suffering in South Africa, when they commit crimes in South Africa, the ANC points to the crimes but doesn't talk about their companies that are causing bigger crimes that are displacing these people, and bigger crimes that are a continuation of the apartheid war that continues to push people into South Africa. And that dependency that the apartheid government and the Western powers wanted on South Africa continues to happen because the ANC did not destroy these unjustly enriched companies and monopolies that continue to perpetuate colonialism on the African continent or apartheid through corporatocracy. Now, this is why I say, Jacob, we support you. We love you, Baba. But you and your brothers that now white monopoly wants to destroy because you want a share of what they stole and they don't want to give you a share. You're complicit with the apartheid system and you have nurtured it. You have nurtured the the maintenance of a maintenance of apartheid constitution. You have nurtured a legal system and left judges who are criminals. You have left white people to continue to be the lawyers and the law creators of this nation, even though they are apartheid criminals. Instead of punishing them the way that the Nazis were punished in Nuremberg, you left them because you wanted to be beneficiaries of this criminal system. They say, no, we left them because we wanted to avoid a civil war. I say white South Africans were not going to undertake a civil war because they knew that the whole of Africa was going to converge in South Africa, and the whole of Africa was going to want to kill them. They would have left this continent, whether they liked it or not. We saw them run from Rhodesia. We saw them run from Mozambique. They would have run from South Africa because the whole of Africa was ready for them. So they would have not caused the civil war. They would have taken what the ANC said. But the ANC felt that it needed whites to maintain a Western economy, and so that's why they compromised. But at whose expense did they compromise? They compromised at the expense of black South Africans. Black South Africans who lived in the Bantustan, and their neighbors who sacrificed so much life for them to keep that creature of apartheid to continue to devour and destroy Africa. And you, even in Northern Africa right now, you'll find that the mercenaries of the South African government, apartheid government, are still destabilizing there. They're still in Liberia. They're still trainers of the Cameroonian forces. They're still going out there protecting the American interests in Libya and Iraq. They are the private security companies there. That is because of the complicity of the ANC, and Jacob Zuma is involved. Now, because Jacob Zuma and them have lacked consistent ideology say, this is our enemy, we destroy the enemy. They decided to say, we will leave the enemy alive, we will leave the enemy with all the power, and we will partake with the enemy. They miscalculated because the enemy doesn't like them. The enemy does not like people like Jacob Zuma because it understands that within their compromising, they are still African at heart and still have intentions to remedy the past.
Correct.
And because this is a spiritual war, it's not just an ideological war, it's not just a political war, it is a spiritual war. These whites have a spirit in them that knows who they can trust and who they can't. Some of the people are trusted because they've done spiritual rituals that have broken them spiritually so that whites know that they are with them forever. But then there are people like Jacob Zuma who might not have done the spiritual rituals. People like Ace Magashule who might not be willing to do the things that have to be done to people who get involved in these white economies without question. They're not trusted. They're not trusted. That's why they're kept on the outside. Now, their being kept on the outside is making them want to take their economy back. And that's a threat to whiteness. So whiteness is beginning to hit back. And whiteness uses the system. That's why it's called institutionalized racism. They use the courts. There are banks right now in South Africa are closing any company that is a competition to white wealth or that seeks to take back white wealth through the same means that white wealth was built, primitive accumulation. They'll close the bank account down. The ANC lets that happen. Now, let me put that in context for you. A bank account is now a human right. There's laws that have been made that people must be paid through the banks. People must be paid through transfers because the taxman wants his share. So they create such a system that forces people to use bank accounts, but they give a bank and private individuals the right to determine who can have a bank account and who can't. That's nonsense. That's criminal. So these criminals who brought apartheid upon the people, these criminals who used to deny Africans food, jobs, opportunity, are the ones that can determine who can have a bank account and who can't. That surely has to be criminal. And they don't need due process. They don't need a trial. They don't need a court order. They don't need any reasonable doubt, a conviction for them to close your account. Today, with me speaking like this, if they decide to close my accounts tomorrow, they'll do it. No one will do anything. And the lawyers of this country sit and watch because they are the middle class that's a beneficiary of this stolen wealth in the white corporate system at the expense of the mama in the location, the mama in the township, the mama in the squatter camp, the mama in the village who have been disenfranchised, impoverished. People don't even have villages to go to because all that was taken away from them. They have a home in a shack and that's all they have because of the complicity of the middle class. And it's not the middle class of South Africa. We've got Zimbabweans who are here. We're part of that middle class. We are involved in creating and protecting this white system. And we only get angry with this white system when it starts denying us and when it starts eating us up. That's what Jacob is doing. That's what Ace Makashule is doing. And my issue with them is, why didn't you do it before? Because you knew this was your enemy. You knew this enemy destroyed our country. Why do you not tell the South African people what this enemy did from our independence, that we never got to enjoy independence, fighting for you, sacrificing our lives and limbs for you, sacrificing our economies for you, fighting the CIA, fighting the West, and we continue to pay for that. Zimbabwe is under sanctions today because of the power that it had to defeat apartheid, to defeat Rhodesia, and to go into wars in Congo, Mozambique, Somalia, Chad, and many other countries on the African continent where imperialism was playing itself out. We suffer today because of that. The ANC doesn't say anything about it. The Radical Economic Transformation crew doesn't say anything about it. In fact, Ace Makashule went to Zimbabwe to try and ridicule the ZANU-PF government by insinuating that it violates the human rights of Zimbabwe, forgetting that it was the lie of a media that they left to fester, controlled by the same criminals of apartheid, because they let them control the airwaves. So this hypocrisy is why I say they nurtured this animal. Now this animal wants to reinstitute apartheid by making ANC lose popularity, destroying ANC leaders, getting into a coalition government with only ANC leaders that have shares in white companies and that have a vested interest with white monopoly, who will then allow a DA and white people to reinstitute apartheid almost totally under black government and the legitimacy of democracy. And these countries, this would then destroy more of SADC. It will sabotage more of Africa. These mercenaries I'm talking about will even be increased. The private armies that we see here called security companies, where white people are armed to the teeth while black people have no arms. And then the police minister of South Africa is trying to disarm people while whites are armed to the teeth, including weapons that are not known and that are not accounted for. And then there's weapons in the hands of security companies. He wants to now take the little arms that black people have when he knows he's dealing with criminals. So this is why I say Jacob Zuma was part of that problem. And this problem affects all of us. That's why I have to speak as a Zimbabwean, because my government can't say what I'm saying. Other Africans are scared to say what I'm saying. The middle class Africans don't even think about what I'm saying because they're beneficiaries of a system that is destroying black South Africans and destroying their own countries without them recognizing that every time Anglo-America is in our country taking all the lithium, taking all the nickel, they're destroying Zimbabwe. When Implats is in Zimbabwe, taking our resources without processing them in Zimbabwe, and then stealing other resources that are unaccounted for, they are destroying Zimbabwe. Pick and Pay is destroying Zimbabwe and other African countries. This is besides the money laundering, the externalization, the illegal trafficking of gold out of our country. So these are the problems we have. And we want, and don't forget that Jacob Zuma was also the person that voted against Muammar Gaddafi. He voted in the 1973 resolution to make a no-fly zone over Libya, knowing very well that he was dealing with liars who had lied that Saddam had weapons of mass destruction. Jacob Zuma decided to vote him, Obasanjo, and another idiot from Gabon there. They decided to vote against an African leader the most powerful African leader who financed the ANC, and they allowed him to be removed by depriving him the right to defend himself, because they held on to this notion of human rights, which they never held at Marikana when they were murdering mine workers. That hypocrisy is what makes me angry about Jacob Zuma. And as a person who lives in South Africa, we began to see some of our biggest financial problems as businesses, African-owned businesses, when Jacob Zuma came into his second term. I would be asked in any meeting that I go, be it government or private sector, if I'm the owner of the company because I'm a Zimbabwean. And if I am the owner of the company, they don't want to do business with you immediately. So white Russians, white Jews, white Americans, Britons, Europeans can come and get tenders of the biggest magnitude here. In my industry of marketing and communication, they're the ones that get given all the opportunity to market and advertise. The ANC goes to a white company to advertise. But with me, because I was a black Zimbabwean in that company, we were not getting any contracts, any tenders. When we went into the private sector, the same thing was happening. So I had to give shares in my company to South Africans. And even then, if it's not 100% owned South African company, you don't get contracts. This is what Jacob Zuma began to do to his own brothers who sacrificed so much to give South Africa independence. We felt the destruction of our businesses in a black country by our own black brothers and sisters, because they did not want to tamper with the white monopoly, with the Russians and Americans and Britons getting contracts here. They would rather punish their own brothers and sisters who spent their lives and their country's economies and shed blood of more than 600,000 people. Those are the people they target. Xenophobia happened under Jacob Zuma. He didn't do anything to end it. Sanctions were on Zimbabwe, and the ANC said nothing about them under Jacob Zuma. Then it comes Cyril Ramaphosa as the first person to start speak against sanctions, even though we know that he's in bed with maintaining white monopoly. But can you blame Cyril Ramaphosa for doing it? Because at least he was clear about where he stands. His other brothers who pretended like they loved Africans were complicit with the white system while pretending like they were not. They were destroying black businesses, allowing xenophobia to take place while they were pretending like they were with their black brothers. So this is where we have anger with Jacob Zuma. When Zulus began to have, in KwaZulu-Natal, we began to have violence against foreigners, Jacob Zuma was fired. Yet Africans are supposed to be united, and we're not supposed to fight each other, because when black South Africans say that Zimbabweans are the reason for crime, Nigerians are the reason for crime, it's no different to the whites that are saying corruption is because of Jacob Zuma. We know who is corrupt here. It's the whites who control 93% of this economy together with the Indians that came here as endangered workers. They are the criminals of this economy. They are the ones who continue to hold on to the unjust enrichment of a crime against humanity. They are the ones who continue to enslave black South Africans. It's not Zimbabweans who are doing it, but the Zimbabweans get punished disproportionately by extrajudicial punishment through xenophobic attacks, extrajudicial punishment through statements made by people like Fikile Mbalula, extrajudicial punishment that are made by South Africans who claim that they were never assisted by African countries to secure their independence, when they're lying, and they're being financed at the background by politicians. And then extrajudicial punishment of exclusion from the economy by the very same people that say they are radical economic transformers and they seek to end white monopoly. But they target their fellow African brothers because they are protecting the white monopoly. So they are complicit. Jacob was complicit. Now the beast wants to eat him. And it wants to destroy him. It wants to destroy other members of the radical economic transformation. And as soon as it's finished with them, it's going to go after the other black members of the ANC and the ANC itself, to force it into a coalition government with the enemies of the revolution, the DA and other political parties. This is what is said about the situation. So we stand with Zuma because he's black, and the struggle that is being fought is an anti-black fight. But we also say to Zuma, he was part and parcel of creating this anti-black sentiment. He was part and parcel of creating and empowering a system that is anti-black. The apartheid system is stronger today than any other time before. Apartheid companies have grown into trillion rand companies, 100 million, $200 million companies like NASPA. And now they've taken their wealth and they've externalized it, and they've gone to Europe and listed on the European Stock Exchange to externalize the wealth and to ring fence this wealth that they stole from South Africa. While that's happening, the gold is finished, the iron is finished, the low sulfur coal is finished, the easy to reach platinum is finished. That's why Implat is now in Zimbabwe, and its most profitable mine is in Zimbabwe, because they've depleted their mines here. They're now difficult to reach. They're now more expensive to reach. Anglo Gold is left because they've depleted all the gold in this country after giving 54% of the world's gold came from South Africa, being pillaged by Cecil John Rhodes, by consolidated mines, and now what is Anglo American? Protected by black South Africa, protected by black leaders who have allowed these companies to grow so powerful that they are more powerful than governments on the African continent. Glencore, its revenue every single month is bigger than almost all African countries except 10. Glencore. You understand? That company was let to fester and grow. Just like Anglo America was made to fester, it's even bigger than Glencore, but the issues, they've divided it and broken it up into little pieces. You can't really see it. But if you understand that Anglo America at some point controlled 60% of the South African economy, and probably still does now, if not more, you must understand what giants have been allowed to create themselves, and monsters have been allowed to create themselves at the expense of African, at the expense of SADC, at the expense of the black South Africans, because of leaders that wanted a piece of the cake from an enemy and a bloodsucker that they knew can only survive by sucking blood.
Wow. Thank you so much, brother. I mean, I'm just going through the comments, and everyone is saying you're the only one that is left to bring out this kind of opinion in a very diverse format. Particularly, I'm really concerned when you talk about South Africans questioning you as a Zimbabwean, what are you doing in Africa? And when you took us back to the contribution of the SADC region in the liberation of the apartheid, it was a general struggle that the African continent actually engaged. So it's not about just, South Africans for South Africa. And I think Honorable Julius Malema has also been making some very clear statements on that. We'll take a short break and with you so that you can drink some water, and we'll watch a short video of what Malema made on this opinion and give out his opinion or his point of interest. Let's just take a look. Brother, you take a sip and we'll get back to you shortly.
With former President Jacob Zuma, and you two have had a broken relationship over the past couple of years. Would you say that you two have now mended your relationship?
I've got no relationship with President Zuma. I went to have a meeting with him to discuss matters of national interest. And before you ask me what are those matters of national interest, you must ask Zondo to tell you what were matters of national interest he discussed with Zuma, a judge. Till today, you have never been told what was Zuma and Zondo discussing. The whole sitting judge going to the house of politicians to discuss matters of national interest. Before you get that answer from Zondo, I will never answer that question because I have no obligation to tell you. But no judge should be going to houses of politicians. In his own admission, Zondo says, I went to discuss with Zuma matters of national importance. Zondo is not being asked, what is a judge doing in a house of a politician? If a judge has got a matter of national importance to discuss with a politician, let it be discussed publicly. What is it that Zondo finds comfort to discuss with Zuma exclusively, which he can share with the nation. So I have no relationship with Zuma. I meet whoever I want, and no one has got a diary. I have no PA, by the way, who controls my diary. I control my own diary. Not even my wife controls my diary. No one will ever control who I meet. I meet anyone I want to meet as long as I know it is in the best interest of our country, then I will do it. And if it means going to meet with Zuma again, I will go. No one can stop me from doing that. I have no personal relationship with Zuma. I have no political relationship with Zuma. But in a democracy like ours, issues must be resolved through engagement, including with our own enemy forces. By the way, Samkelo, I've got no any bad blood with my exes, all of them. I'm that type. So I hold no bitter grudges about anything that happened in the past. I still engage openly and frankly.
When it comes to the issues, particularly with former President Jacob Zuma, just to take the nation into confidence, what are those issues of national importance that you discussed with him, and did he heed your advice that you were giving to him, and what are the importance of having Senior Counsel Advocate Dalimpo for this?
Well, I said let Zondo tell you first. If Zondo answers that question, what is it that he was discussing with Zuma as a sitting judge with a politician at night in the house of a politician? For as long as Zondo has not answered that question, I'm not at any liberty to tell you what I discussed with Zuma. So Dalimpofu is a leader of the EFF in his own right, and from time to time you will see him represent the EFF or go as a delegation of the EFF. He has never denounced his membership of the EFF, so he was part of my delegation to go and meet Msholozi and have tea with Msholozi, the former president. Whether somebody likes it or not is their own problem. When I go to meet Zuma, the Tumamina media group says Malema is planning a fight back with Zuma against Ramaphosa. But when the top six goes and meet Zuma, they are not planning a fight back against Ramaphosa. The hypocrisy of this country will never get to me. I know you. Same thing is done. I open the doors. They are all scared to go and meet Zuma and tell him what we want to tell him on his face. In a very charged meeting for 3 hours, where you could touch tensions with your hand. We tell each other our issues like that. They are all scared to do that. Once Malema is gone, they all follow, like Casey and Jojo, because they've got no plan. Then Malema comes back. Hey, Malema is planning with Zuma to collapse Ramaphosa. The same Ramaphosa and the ANC do exactly what Malema did. There is no headline that, no, Malema, a top six is planning to collapse Syria, because they went to meet with Zuma. When we criticize the judges on how the judges must conduct themselves, they are attacking the judges. When the white former judges attack Klope, no. It's not attack on judges. Klope must be taken to all types of things. There are certain rules for others and certain rules for others. It's not going to work with me. You can hate me for that. That nonsense will never get to me. I'm going to pursue collectively with the leadership of the EFF what is in the best interest of this country and the generations to come after us. History will absolve us. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. That was a back-on-back conversation with Honorable Julius Malema on his involvement and his engagement on the issue, not just the direct issue, but you could see this divided opinion on who is backing who from the inside point of view. But I want to get back to one very strategic thing that you said, Rutendo, and I think that is very, very necessary. Like it's a throw-out question. Do you actually think that particularly when South Africa on the issue of xenophobia, attacking other African nations and say, no, South Africa belongs to South Africans, do you think it's because of the lack of this history that is not taught, that the South Africans don't understand the contribution of the entire continent, particularly the SADC region, in the fight against apartheid?
Correct. It's because South Africans don't understand, and it is deliberately done for South Africans not to understand. The ANC has continued to perpetuate the education system that doesn't teach this to their citizens, and I think it's deliberate. I also think, therefore, they are complicit in the xenophobia that happens. Hence, they don't tell their citizens the truth. And I think they don't tell their citizens the truth because in the back of their minds, they think it's a competition. If this is what that poor African countries could do for South Africa, why couldn't we fight for ourselves or whatever it is? And I think that she should be inconsequential. The point is that everybody knew that the apartheid government was a formidable force. It was a powerful force. And we understand the reasons why brothers and sisters might not have been able to fight South Africa immediately from the onset, because part of South Africa is surrounded by ocean. Where were they going to get the weapons? Where were they going to get the training bases? They only had to go up north. And when they came up north, they came into countries that had just come from wars. They were not able to get as much support financially as they could have wanted. But at the end of the day, those countries had to fight with their own armies against the beast of apartheid. This is something that the ANC must say, and they don't say that. And ANC politicians have been accused of being behind the xenophobia attack. And what we always say is that, does the ANC want to cause xenophobia attacks to the point where African countries need to come back again together, like they did against a nuclear power apartheid South Africa, to now fight the ANC for killing Africans and allowing Africans to be killed by their own citizens as a weapon against other Africans? You know, so the ANC has got no justification for never teaching this history. And the ANC has got no justification for a person like myself who they want to shut up to be the one telling this history when they should have been the one to teach this history. It's also the same difference that I've got with Malema, to say Malema knows this history, but Malema doesn't speak this history either. He talks about Pan-Africanism, the need for Africans to come together, but I've never heard him say Africans have got to come together because these people liberated us. They fought wars for us. They fought 4 wars on 4 different borders with South Africa for us to get independent. Because the narrative must remain that Africans are being done a favor by South Africa. The narrative must remain that Africans are barbarians, their leaders are stupid, their leaders are ignorant, and we, South Africa, the saviors of the continent, are doing them a favor. Because the moment they have to say, no, we got our independence because the Zimbabwean government of ZANU-PF went and fought a war in its own land and in Mozambique, it automatically starts to say competency of ZANU-PF government. It starts to talk about the competence of the Angolan government and the Cubans who defeated the apartheid government that they couldn't defeat. And they don't want that narrative. So we have a neo-colonial mentality among our own brothers and sisters in South Africa, to the extent that now, after 20 years of silence on an issue like this, I'm having to make this communication to say what can't be said, to say what many brothers and sisters are afraid to say what many people tomorrow are going to say is arrogance on my part, to say the history of our countries and the history that our countries played, because we're trying to make sure that we build African unity. I get asked this question as to why do I comment about South Africa? But Europeans who are invaders here, who got their citizenship illegitimately from a government that was perpetuating a crime against the majority of these people, will never get asked why they comment about South Africa, even though they are criminal. even though they are murderers, even though all of them are beneficiaries of a crime against humanity. They won't get asked that. But me, a Zimbabwean who came here legitimately, was invited to come here and came here legally. Don't control anything, don't dominate anyone, don't enslave anyone. I will be told that I have no right to speak. Yet the constitution of this very same country allows freedom of speech. A constitution we fought for, we shed blood for. It's ironic. And people like Julius Malema say some of these things that I'm saying, and we're grateful for that, but they don't say the full truth. Julius Malema is silent on the sanctions on Zimbabwe. But he knows very well that the sanctions on Zimbabwe have nothing to do with ZANU-PF human rights violations as alleged, because they've never been tried in any court and proved to exist. But it is because ZANU-PF is being punished for being radical, for fighting apartheid, for fighting and defeating the Rhodesians and the American mercenaries and the Europeans, for going into Congo and fighting and kicking ass in Congo and stopping Congo from being divided into 4 different states, and for going into Somalia, Sudan, Chad, Equatorial Guinea, and Angola to end the life of Savimbi, for there to be peace in Angola today. They don't want that truth to be said, because then it means Zimbabwe's military is the most significant military, the most successful military, and the military that has been able to protect this continent more than any other by statistics and numbers. They don't want that truth to be said. In the same way, Zuma was there to vote and to destroy Gaddafi, who had financed so many projects, including the first African satellite into space. That hypocrisy, this union between our black brothers in South Africa with their white enemies over their African counterparts is something we have to fight. And I am beginning that fight by speaking this truth to challenge the status quo and say, it's time that you give credit to other Africans so that our legacy becomes a unified legacy, which we all come together behind.
It's sad, but it's honest. And another opinion, or I'm seeing some questions are coming in the chat too. Does South Africa not see this even as, like you said, it's a strategy, but it's a strategy to their disadvantage? And now let's just play around with a scenario that it would happen again. So who would back them if you are against fighting the same people that you might give a handshake in times of need? So how do you build those allies? By already saying that you are, so you're singled out. And so when the perpetual threat comes, you're left alone. And do you think they're conscious of this?
I don't think they're conscious of this, because if they fully understood the threat that they stand, a threat of white South Africans making a stance for a certain section of this country and putting up a fight that will be supported by the Europeans and the Americans so that they can have independence of their own little area of South Africa. If black South Africans understood that this is the threat they stand, if they understood that the enemy that they kept alive is not a benign enemy, but it is a very dangerous enemy with evil intentions, they would have taken an interest in uniting with other African countries to deal with this threat. They would have also acknowledged that when they were given this negotiation, they had been given a victory on a silver platter by the blood and the finances spent by SADC countries, and they had an obligation to therefore negotiate a deal that was equitable to black South Africans who these other countries were fighting for, and at the same time to give a reprieve to the African countries that sacrificed so much for them by making sure that the monsters that were fighting us in our countries, that were sabotaging our countries, would be destroyed. At least South Africa had the obligation to do that, and it had the obligation to do that not for the interest of Africa, but for their own interest. Now, South Africa has just signed the Africa Free Trade Agreement with 52 other countries. How do we have Africa Free Trade where we build in Africa when we've got the companies of the enemy and the banks of the enemy controlling our economies on the African continent? How do we build in Africa when we are being vaccinated on the African continent by companies that don't belong to Africans? This is where we're supposed to unify as a people for our own racial and national interest. And right now, what's happening to Zuma is what they intend to do to ACE and all the radical economic transformation people. They want to take them down one by one by a selective judicial process that will punish these people as thieves and criminals who are corrupt. And they'll be supported by the middle class of South Africa, who are the doctors, the lawyers, the jurists of this country, and the judges, who have taken kickbacks because they own shares in these apartheid companies. They have shares in criminal companies. That's fascism. They have jobs. They have board positions in this criminal entity. So they will protect them with all their might without realizing that these criminal entities, as they did during apartheid, will destroy every black person for their own benefit. I don't know where we need to stand to say this. Hence, I'm speaking. And I'm speaking in a manner that it's a threat to my own life. I am even scared to talk about the South African situation more than I am scared to talk against the Americans. I've been fighting the Americans for a long time. I'm not scared to be murdered by the CIA much more than I'm scared to be murdered in South Africa by either my own people or the enemy, who will use our own people. But this has to be said. We are never going to get liberation on the African continent until South Africa stops being a force of imperialism. And we are not going to have a peace in Africa until the countries in the north, the 14 colonies of Africa, break themselves from France, because they're doing exactly what South Africa is doing. We will never have a united Africa until those countries, the 36 countries that have got bases. Kenya has got 2 bases. Kenya has got a British base and American base. What insanity is that? Djibouti has got the biggest American base in Le Manier. We can't have that on the African continent. Botswana is the only SADC country to also have a US base. What kind of people are we that only cater for the interests of the enemy? What kind of Pan-Africanists are we who talk about Pan-Africanism in general terms, but we don't want to home in on the exact ways that exact ways that neocolonialism is manifesting. It's manifesting through countries like South Africa. It's manifesting through the colonies of France. The problem in your own country is at the door of France. The reason why we've got people in your own country fighting for independence is because of France. We have to sort these problems out and stop pussyfooting around them. And people like Zuma, who we are giving support now, have got to then mend their ways, correct their ways, and fix the problem. And never forget this. People are now talking about Cyril Ramaphosa being the problem in the ANC. Who brought him into the ANC? Was it not the same people from Zuma? Who brought a capitalist into the power structures of a radical movement? If that radical movement was not compromised in its own respect, if that radical movement was not a threat to black survival because it was in bed with capitalism, who brought Cyril into the thing? And one thing about Cyril is he's consistent. He's never pretended to be anything other than what he is. It's these other guys who pretend to be everything else that they are not, that are actually the enablers of the system that is. They are the ones that when we speak these truths, while white people say black people are incompetent, they are corrupt, they can't do business, they never tell those white people to keep quiet, but they'll be the first to say, don't forget, you're a guest here. Don't forget, don't get too excited. They will threaten a black person from speaking the truth that will build the black collective, but they'll keep quiet when the Indians, the Chinese, and the whites, their enemies, speak nonsense about them. They'll never say to a European, go back to Europe. They'll say that to an African. The police will stop an African and ask them for papers and all sorts of things, and harass and bully and even kill. They won't do that to a white man. These are the things that we need to fix. And it needs to be fixed in South Africa if Africa is going to come right.
Okay. There is a comment here. Former President Jacob Zuma is imprisoned for refusing to appear before a biased court, but Koos Becker refused to appear in front of the very same commission and is left alone. So justice does have a color in South Africa. Now, do you think that his refusal even to appear in court and was on the opinion that maybe he might have learned that this could be some kind of betrayal, he never saw this coming? And do you think that, like you said, learning from it, what would change?
Zuma knew that the courts were biased from the beginning. In fact, when they created the Constitution of South Africa, they knew that they were creating a constitution that was going to be biased. When they maintained apartheid judges, when they maintained a Roman Dutch law to protect Romans in an African country, they knew that they were creating a system to protect white interests. The only thing is that I don't think Zuma knew that this thing was going to be turned against him, even though he says that attacks on him had started from the beginning. When he saw Chris Hani being eliminated, he knew what kind of a system he was protecting. Him and all the other guys that the system is about to swallow right now, they knew. So when he refused to go to these kangaroo courts, he was refusing to go to the kangaroo court because now there were consequences. He goes to the kangaroo court, a legitimate decision could be reached against him and he could be punished. My issue is, why do you have to wait for an illegal system to continue to live and only act against it when it's about to eat you up? That's why I know some people don't support him, because they feel it's a legitimate system. You were quiet all along. You supported it all along. You allowed it to steamroll other people all along. You never complained all along. Why are you complaining now? You should have complained at the beginning. Some might even say should never have been part of the leadership of the ANC once it supported this crime. We've all been suffering under this system. I have got a person that I've always been speaking about for trying to disseminate GMOs and non-GMOs or GMOs on the African continent and imperialism on the African continent. That person took me to a court in South Africa to gag me. And the gag order was given after a person who did not have locus standi, a person that did not have standing in the courts, a person who was not given a mandate by the boards of the companies that he said he was representing, came into South African courts. And when we tried to fight to see if this person had locus standi to come into South African courts, a South African judge made a biased decision. And because I don't have millions of dollars to go and fight this, I had to accept the gag order. And this happens on a daily basis because justice in South Africa is for the rich. And black people, you'll be taken through the South African justice system for years on end until you get broke. So justice is not for you. It's for those who accumulated the wealth of this country by stealing. Today, this person is now doing other things other than just dispensing GMOs on the continent, because I can't speak. And that person is supported by the justice system of this country. So I can't complain to anybody. I will have no one who stand by me if I boycotted that system. At least Zuma has got people behind him.
All right, but it's also okay to say, I mean, he's not completely, I want to put it, he's not completely non-complicit or guilty of it, because if you go against the same law to which you yourself, energized or brought, that is something. We have a comment here from a follower who said, King is narrating the situation. King Buye Lekeya Abatemendu, asked for some kind of like a presidential pardon during the presidency of his former president Jacob Zuma, and he responded by saying, "No, there is no pardon because no one is against the law." And so, in a situation like this, like, okay, we understand about all the circumstances surrounding, but like, you fall into the same pit that you. So, like, even in a talk of war or in this kind of injustices, they would always pin you at your own very error, and so they come out hands clean. Is it correct to say that?
It's very correct. Let me put it, he's talking about the Amatembu king who was arrested for, my understanding is that he caused violence upon one of his subjects. And so that subject went to court and the sentence was given. So someone would say that the law in this case was protecting a subject who was being steamrolled by the hegemony of the king. I don't know whether that is truth, but that is what is being said. And at that time, Jacob Zuma said it was legitimate and this king must be punished and that he's not above the law. And someone would say that he was protecting this person, but other people say that there was a political fight that was being played because the Amatembu king was no longer supporting the ANC and he had criticized Jacob Zuma, quite vocally. There's also the case of the fees must fall. A young gentleman from the fees must fall was arrested and went to prison for fighting for free education. Julius Malema was taken out of the ANC for talking about land appropriation without compensation. Zuma was presiding at that time when Julius Malema was chucked out of the ANC, hence his bitterness towards Zuma. To say, how do you say you are radical in economic transformation today when you chased me out of the ANC specifically for pushing you to undertake radical economic transformation and land reform? So there are a number of those decisions that have been made by Zuma, the Gaddafi scenario. All these are unjustifiable because they put Zuma directly in the camp of the very same illegal system of law that he is now complaining about. He was a custodian. He was an enabler of it. However, that does not mean that the law has become legitimate now that Zuma is the victim of it. It's still illegitimate. And now he's choosing to act against the system because it's eating him up. And I'm saying that's not leadership. Leadership means when injustice is happening on the man with no power, that's when you must respond. When I am seeing my own countrymen dying because of sanctions in Zimbabwe, even though I'm not suffering from the sanctions directly, I must stand up and fight for those people. I must stand up and fight against the sanctions that seek to take away land from Zimbabweans to put it back in the hands of the colonizer, even though I don't have a piece of land. You understand? Correct. So you need leadership that is selfless, leadership that doesn't only respond and fight injustice when you are the one suffering. You must fight for the voiceless. And Zuma did not fight for the voiceless. But there are also many things that he did well. He did many things while trying to change the things, especially late in his leadership. But people ask, was he doing it because that's what he always wanted to do? Or was he now changing to get the support of the masses who need land, the support of the masses who need to be included in the economy?
Thank you very much, brother. I think we will have to take some a couple of questions. I see in the chat people requesting. So you take a short break and we pick up some questions. If you have a question or you have a comment, please call in on +49 1578 211 230. Please WhatsApp only. WhatsApp only, and we'll be ready to take your question or to take your comment. In the meantime, while we're waiting for the calls to come in, thank you actually for this perspective. And actually, this is the situation, and we know on the Pan-African Daily TV, it's more of an educational, looking for solutions. Like you said, the challenge is this, what we have now, and the solution is what we would. I think you would have to close it up after the calls, let's look for the ways. This is the Eastern. This is the problem now. How do we get out? Education on ourselves, or how do we actually go forward? So I'm picking up this call. Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening, sir. Good evening. Welcome. Yes.
Good evening, Susan Tanda. Just tell Rutendo that I love what he's saying today. I love what he's speaking. It's been a while before we've seen him, so it's good to hear from him again. It's always a pleasure to hear what he has to say.
Thank you.
But the question I want to ask him is quite direct questions. From my point of view, I feel like if colonialism had continued, I think Southern Africa, or most of Africa, would have gone the way of Native Americans. And they would have gone that way, they would have been eliminated. I think colonialism, in the definition itself, means to settle the land, take over the land, control it militarily, politically, and economically. So I think Southern Africans would have completely disappeared if colonialism had continued. I want to know what he thinks about that. And also, there's this statement I make, like, I think he alluded to it as well. He said the problem with African unity is the economic dominance of white Africans in Southern Africa and the French dominance in Western Africa and Central Africa, and then you have Northern Africa, but potentially they are not that. They might join or something. But then you have the military bases in East Africa as well. So he alluded to that. So I think he's right about that. And then the next one I want to ask, it's the issue of the fourth industrial revolution being hijacked in Africa. There are so many companies investing and pumping money into Africa. All these opportunities that we're sensing in Africa, they sense it as well, and they want to have a huge stake in it. They are pumping huge money to have huge stakes in African startup companies in these businesses. This is a sign of economic colonization. They're planning to colonize Africa in the fourth industrial revolution. This is what's happening because they sense the market potential, so they all want to have a stake. Why did these leaders give them this position? By allowing them to do this, it just means the leaders never actually believe that Africans will be the ones to develop Africa. They believe to use the greed of the white people to develop Africa. Is that a positive thing at the end of the day? Or do the leaders intend at all, or are they just being very hopeful? Anyways, I rest my question. Sorry, it's a long one.
Thank you so much for your contribution. They're very concrete and direct questions, and Rutendo is quite ready to take on that perspective. But one thing that just a point, or before we go over to Rutendo, let us pick this other call. Probably there will be the same questions or some other things that are related. Hello. Hello, welcome.
Hello, welcome. How you doing, sister?
Fine, thank you.
All right. My name is Daphne, calling from Texas.
Okay.
All right. I want to first of all, I want to appreciate the hard work of the master teacher Rutendo. He's like a teacher to us, He's doing great. So I want to tell them to keep on doing hard work, My question is like, did there be any time like in history, like they're gonna try to, because what he's trying to teach right now is like you need to be to the history book, so they can teach you to each and every schools in South Africa, to the west part of Africa, or the north part of Africa, or the eastern part of Africa. So is there be any time, or in this region, South Africa, are they teaching this history to the student? So I'm trying to ask my brother that question, so he can give us answer on that.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Good. Over to you, The Rock.
Okay, I'm just finishing my notes here. Sorry.
I'm sorry, Rutendo. Before you answer, because you're concluding, I want to thank the viewers. And like you heard in the beginning, if you came late, our brother Rutendo, you can already imagine. I think when you just look at Rutendo and you see his work, he doesn't need to tell us that we should be supportive We should continue to encourage. Even what we're requesting to put all this into history. We all know what Professor James Small keeps saying. Know your history. It's going to erase the mystery. But how do Rutendo go about this? So we need that support. Rutendo needs your support. He is grateful for the 1 or 2 people that reach out, and we can do more. The more reason he doesn't come often, or most of them would not come. It takes a lot. It takes not just your energy, it takes the passion, but it also takes the security financially as well, to carry up all these projects. So I don't think transforming this into a history would be something that he's already doing it. He's been doing it, but probably now he has to move it into the way of mentorship, leadership, and teacher, like he said, but that also requires a lot of funding. So Rutendo looks out. We from the Pan-African Daily TV, we're calling out to sympathizers, followers. And you know what, how we do it? You don't need to donate to the Pan-African Daily and we give it to Rutendo. No, we don't do it like any other person, any expert that you find on the Pan-African Daily presenting their project and you're moved by that project. What we do is just to facilitate the contact to them. Whatever support, whatever engagement, how you want to do it, that is a one-on-one on you, because Rutendo is only here. I'm not the one exhibiting those projects. We are happy to find him sit here with us. So if you are looking forward, not if you should be looking forward to support this movement so that we can reach out. There's too much ignorance in our history. So over to you, Rutendo. That's just what I wanted to say.
Yes, and I just wanted to add on to what you're saying, sis. One of the major things that Facebook is very clever to do is that when it gets people who have a voice so powerful as mine on these historical issues that empower Africans to fight for their liberation, to become woke and to take action, they silence you. You begin to see very few people can find your posts, your videos. I used to have videos that used to do 100,000, easily. Right now, I struggle to do 2,000 because Facebook has throttled my account. Twitter has not even tolerated me. They've shut me down. So what happens is we have to use alternative platforms. I have to use blogs. I have to use WhatsApp. We have to create the content and videos in different formats. All that costs a lot of money, time, and sometimes we just ask for support in saying, buy a t-shirt, buy 2, buy 3, buy 10. Help us to continue to make this information available. If you are sitting there right now and you're listening to me for the first time and you're surprised by what I'm saying, you think it's a conspiracy theory because you've never heard it before, it's a sign that information or good knowledge is not being given ventilation. So you need to play a part to assist us to create this knowledge, to create documentaries for this knowledge, to create documentaries that are going to be played by TV stations all across the African continent. That costs huge money. That's the game we have to play now, because that's how the West indoctrinate us, is they create content. They create books, they create magazines, they create blogs, and they back that up with moving pictures in documentary. So we need assistance as much as possible to be able to make this kind of information go forward. So the gentleman asked a question. The first gentleman, he never gave me his name, but love his comments, and he gets it. Because, let me straighten this up. By saying what I'm saying about South Africa, I'm not judging South Africa. I'm creating knowledge. I'm creating an analysis. I'm creating a problem statement that must provoke the leaders of this country to understand that we are standing in a crosshairs of being eliminated by our enemies, and we need to fight. Henry Kissinger called Southern Africa the Persian Gulf of strategic mineral resources, because it's got mineral resources that are not found anywhere else in the world that are relevant for the military industry and industry in the West. And without these, the West cannot function. These are nickel, lithium, chrome, iron, magnesium, PGMs, platinum group metals. Over 80%, over 95% of all PGMs are found in Southern Africa in 2 countries, South Africa and Zimbabwe. chrome is found in only 2 countries in the best quality being in Zimbabwe, where 68% of the highest grade of chrome is in Zimbabwe. 68%. I mean, 86%, sorry. So it's not 68, 86%. And the rest, low quality chrome, 80 to 90% of it is in South Africa. Then the rest is in a country called Russia. I think you know what that means. Okay? So we need to be able to understand this and understand that we've got so much to protect. And Zimbabwe can't protect this region alone. South Africa can't protect this region alone. None of the countries can protect this region alone. Hence, we have to fight together. And Mugabe, who was vilified by the media, knew this and fought to protect those interests. And because he got it, the Western world hated him, vilified him, and tried to tarnish his name so that the knowledge that he had about what Africans were protecting in Southern Africa would not go forward. They will not hesitate to eliminate every single black person in Southern Africa to take control of these resources that they need. And now we've even added more. Zimbabwe has now got oil. South Africa has found oil. We've got gas in Zimbabwe. South Africa has found gas. We've got lithium. This is the new fuel, the new petrol of the world tomorrow. Nickel. Actually, they're not nickel. They're not lithium batteries. They're actually nickel carbon batteries. The lithium is very little. Nickel, Zimbabwe is full of nickel. This is what we're protecting, ladies and gentlemen. And the middle class, you, the biggest complicit criminals to this pillage, middle class, because you've got nice cars and you've got debt and you've got given loans, who support this system. You must know what you're protecting and what you're giving away for debt. Now, this gentleman said that Southern Africa would have been eliminated by the West. This is the region that they clung onto and are still clinging onto. Zimbabwe is under sanctions because they still want to go back into Zimbabwe. They've put it under sanctions to keep everybody else out so that it's left for them. We need to know that. South Africa is still being, it's got all these challenges because white South Africans are still controlling it for the West. We need to purge ourselves of these parasites, these vampires. And I am willing to risk my life to say what I'm saying so that you begin to know that you protect yourself in this interest, otherwise you get eliminated. They've already given us HIV. The most HIV in the world is in Southern Africa. It is not a mistake. It was done deliberately by SIMA, South African doctors, South African agents, and also the NGOs from Sweden, Scandinavia, and Europe. They were involved in spreading HIV in Southern Africa. They are now bringing GMOs and hybrids that are low in nutritional value to destroy our immunity, to destroy our health, and to destroy our soils through their fertilizers and these nasty plants that they give us to farm, and these nasty farming technologies and techniques where we begin to see the money without seeing the inheritance that we're destroying in our soil. We need to wake up. The reason why a person who is a billionaire would take me to court and fight to gag me is because what I'm saying has got some truths that very powerful people don't want Africans to know. Government officials are not meant to know some of the things I say, but I'm saying them. And you need to wake up, because the agenda is what the first gentleman was saying, is to eliminate us. It hasn't ended. They're still fighting to eliminate us. They've got sanctions to eliminate us. That's why they've displaced 3 million Zimbabweans through sanctions to destroy. And he then said in the first, if colonialism had continued, he says economic dominance in Southern Africa and French countries by whites is a problem to African unity. Absolutely. This is why I dislike the finance minister of Zimbabwe, Mthuli Ncube, who his own family doesn't even live in the Zimbabwe that he's trying to attract investment into, because he is a mercenary who's come to destroy our economy by re-inviting foreign direct investment into our country that comes from the West. But let me ask African leaders that, do you think when you want foreign direct investment in your country and think it's going to grow your country, but you forget that colonialism was all about foreign direct investment from the West that only invested in your countries alone, but it impoverished you. What makes you think that foreign direct investment that is now coming back is different to the one that was there during colonialism? Zimbabwe was colonized for 90 years. It had white leadership, white finance ministers educated in Europe. It then had white direct foreign investment from America, Britain, and overseas. And they never lifted the black man. They impoverished him to an extent that 16-year-olds had to walk from Zimbabwe to Zambia, from Zimbabwe to Mozambique, and Zimbabwe to Tanzania to fight a liberation war, to liberate themselves from foreign direct investment. Why the hell are we stupid to think that this foreign direct investment will lift us today? When we got independence in the 1990s, foreign direct investment had made Zimbabwe the second biggest stock exchange in Africa. But the moment Robert Mugabe compensated our liberation fighters for fighting a war 17 years before and being impoverished by that war, $3.8 billion left in one Friday, and left us struggling. Our currency crashed, and the money that was being taken out of Zimbabwe was our money that was built off our enslavement, built off our exploitation, the exploitation of our mineral resources. Those farmers who we left with land, they sabotaged our economy. How do we then want the same people to come back? How do we have a finance minister that takes away indigenization to bring back the very same criminals into our economy to exploit our people and to own our resources and for us to be cheap labor? That's colonialism all again. So why did we fight for independence? So these finance ministers of Southern Africa, complicit in continuing to bring our economies into white hegemony. And you might not understand my frustration. In Zimbabwe, we fought a war and we liberated ourselves by the gun. But the entire food system is controlled by one man called Zed Kudnaris. One man, a Greek man, educated in the University of Rhodesia. He's a Rhodesian. He acts like a gangster in our country. We're a liberated country. We're an educated Zimbabwe. Why? Why should we give monopoly to one person like that? We've got Billy Rottenbach, who owns sugar mills in Zimbabwe. He's chasing Zimbabweans off their ancestral land in this day and age after Robert Mugabe fought. And ZANU-PF fought for land reform. We went under sanctions for 20 years for reforming our land, but we're allowing one white man to move Zimbabweans on their land. Our meat industry is controlled by whites. All our processed foods controlled by whites. All our food is determined, whites determine whether they feed us poison or good food. That's nonsense. This is threatening the rest of Africa when African leaders in Southern Africa don't take leadership and give our economy back to whites because they want to look like they're succeeding and yet they're giving us over. Zimbabwe seeds are controlled by a company called Seedco. All of you Africans must start knowing today that Seedco is not an African company. Seedco is owned by Lima Grain of France. Seedco is not our company. And it is proliferating hybrids on the African continent so that we have to go on a pay-as-you-go system for food. And we have in our country, Zimbabwe, a man who was working in Seedco is now working in our agricultural department. What do you think that man is going to advance there? He's probably got share options. He's probably got shares in Seedco. That man will advance Seedco interest and not our government and our national interest. Why should we be in that position? Why should we have a French company on a continent where France is still controlling and colonizing 14 countries? Why should we accept such a company in our nation? It had to be taken off the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange, that particular company, Seedco, because it was causing externalization. Old Mutual, which I told you was fighting wars with us and against us, is still registered in Zimbabwe, owning properties in Zimbabwe. Why? So Southern Africa is selling out. Our leaders in Southern Africa are selling out. They continue to be dependent on Europeans. And in Zimbabwe, we've got no excuse to be dependent on Europeans because Zimbabweans have got over $24 billion in savings in foreign countries. 60% of our GDP in Zimbabwe, value of 60%, is in tax haven. And then we must add what is saved in countries that are not tax havens like South Africa, Britain, Canada, Australia. We've got lots of savings in Zimbabwean hands that is not being courted to come and be home biased investment, because our finance minister, whose family lives in Switzerland, is busy courting Europeans to come back to Zimbabwe. South Africa is doing the same. These neoliberal economists, educated in creating African dependence, making Africa a specialist in diminishing return activities of being resource centers instead of being resource processing centers, are the people that are impoverishing us, destroying us for the West. Mtuli Ngube, why can't his family come and live in Zimbabwe, where he's getting paid one of the highest salaries in our government? Why can't he come back home and his family come back home? We can't come back home because we've got no access to resources. We've got no access to capital stolen by these criminals. And we're trying to earn at least a bit of it back to start becoming investors as well. And when we are trying to do that, he destroys indigenization. He destroys policies that empower Black Zimbabweans to empower Europeans once again. The same people that sabotaged the economy the moment ZANU-PF made policies that they didn't like. Why can't these learn? So this gentleman is right that these people in Southern Africa are threatening the whole of Africa. Together with those French colonies, they are doing exactly what the Zimbabweans and South Africans are doing. And then there are the idiots, and I call them idiot leaders. The Ghanaian president, he's an idiot because he's allowed the Americans to have a base. He signed a secret agreement with the Americans who have a base whose soldiers do not abide by Ghanaian laws, but they abide by the laws of America on Ghanaian soil. I told you about Kenya doing the same thing. Somalia is doing the same thing. Many African countries are doing that. Why? Why are we so foolish? We fought imperialism. We fought colonialism against these people. And it's one of the major reasons when Kenneth Kaunda died, I was very scathing about Kenneth Kaunda and saying he's not one of the people we should be praising on the African continent, because that man was complicit with Kissinger, complicit with Worcester of South Africa, complicit with Ian Smith in sabotaging a ZANU-PF victory, forcing them to go and negotiate at Lancaster so that they can accept terms to protect white property in Zimbabwe. He was complicit with the Boers in Angola when he was supporting FNLP. Kaunda was supporting them on behalf of the Boers to fight against MPLA, which is supposed to be a liberation movement. That level of these leaders that love white people so much and believe that Africans can't do without white people. So they keep compromising, they keep negotiating. They negotiate with the Lonros and the Anglo-Americans of this world, are the biggest cancer on the African continent. And they will see to it that we get destroyed. They will see to it that we get eliminated by vaccines, eliminated by GMOs, eliminated by chemicals, eliminated by other means, which will then give control to the West, who, when they control our economy, they control our resources. They are going to then put our resources on their side of the balance sheet, on the blockchain, to bring us to the 4IR that the other gentleman spoke of. We are going to have these white people controlling our resources, and then they're going to bring their technologies and machines to work in the jobs and not human beings. They're going to make their stuff with machines overseas and sell it into our markets and take the little savings that we've got. Because our leaders believe in their enemy. They believe in the apartheid companies. They believe in Western capital, even though Western capital for the past 700 years has shown only one intention. And I say 700 years, I'm talking from the time that the doctrine of discovery was implemented in 1454, was a decree made by a pope to go and colonize African peoples, colonize their lands, enslave them on their lands, control their resources for generations to come. Anybody who doubts me, go and look at the doctrine of discovery and see what the Pope said. These white people are fulfilling a covenant, a spiritual covenant to dominate blacks, to dominate blacks for the sake and the benefit of the gods that gave them the knowledge of science that is destroying this world. We must wake up. And then this, the second caller then said that, is the history I am teaching being taught in Southern Africa? No, it's not. It's not being taught in the most revolutionary country on African continent, which is Zimbabwe. They don't teach this. They teach Zimbabweans to love white investment. They teach Zimbabweans to want white investors. They teach Zimbabweans not to believe that black men can do it, even though we've got master's degrees, doctorates, and even robotics engineers who teach in Harvard. Our government has no faith in its own people. They have no faith in African tradition. They've got no faith in African knowledge. They've got no faith in African spirituality. They've got no faith in African economics that built us one of 6 empires on the African continent, which was in Zimbabwe. No different to the Nigerians, to the people of the Songhai Empire, the Ghanaians, who also believe in Europeans, who believe in foreigners, much more than believe in their own people. My own government is under sanctions. They've never created a policy to court African Americans, the African diaspora, and Africans to come and invest in Zimbabwe. My own government now has got 2 people who've been sent into my civil society organization to come and destroy it because they don't want me to speak against the Americans and speak about sanctions because they are re-engaging the Americans. This is how Africans are destructive of their own people for foreigners. I'm one of the best people to have articulated the issue of sanctions in Zimbabwe, but my government will go and pay lobbyists, white companies and white PR agencies in America instead of me. That's what Africa is about. They do that with other people. Amazing engineers, amazing economists will not be given an opportunity to do their businesses in Zimbabwe because Zimbabwe is busy giving opportunities either to family members, to those who are known to government officials, or to whites and Europeans and foreigners. It's happening in South Africa too. It's happening in Botswana. It's happening all across the continent. In Botswana right now, the government is in bed with De Beers, Anglo America, the same company that used to fund the apartheid government to bomb Botswana. How? I gotta go.
It is okay. It's okay. Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing this wonderful conversation with us. And way forward is always easy. Take a break, brother. It's okay. And we understand it's a challenge. And the way forward, I know we will still have to have you. I want us to have the conversation on agriculture, because yes, like we say, the advocacy for the need for us to actually unite and know ourselves and even start by learning these things. How much would it cost us? How much time do we take? How much do we need to pull to draw out of Rutendo before we understand? Sometimes I just think we also really just, we enjoy the conversations and the talks. It takes just one production like we've done now for 2 hours or 2 hours running, and the whole history is surrounding. It's reachable. So please make sure you click and share. When we get you get one lecture, we share it to others to empower others, to encourage them. We want a continent that works for the interests of Africans. We want a continent where Africans can sit at the table and make a decision on their needs, where Africans can have a say about who they worship, how they live their life in their continent. No other continent on this planet is so unprotective of its citizens the way the African is. These are opinions and perspective of the Africans that we want. 2063 is an agenda, but we also have other agendas that are saying 2030. What takes us to 2063? We're a continent of civilized and educated people. Now we need to drain one another, drain them to a point where it becomes, it is a Rutendo that we have to see. No, it is us, all of us. teaching ourselves and teaching one another, empowering one another. What is it that we even need to teach? We know everything that we're supposed to do. So it's a collective, it's a communal spirit, it's the spirit of Ubuntu. But one thing that we can be sure of is the world has to define the way of doing business. I know when we hosted the Africa Business Forum in Tübingen on the festivals that I did, 2015, we had the spokesperson for the Angela Merkel government, Gunther Noke, and he made one very strategic point to say, of course, they do recognize the differences and the issues, and that the governments in the West should know how to do business with the poor. I mean, and then you begin to ask yourself, is that relevant? What about all what happened? We're just forgetting history. Now we start to teach ourselves that we have to know, and he even went out and made a statement like, it is so unrealistic for a German company to sell let's just say a Lamborghini. They don't make it, the Italians, but let's say to say an SUV that is Audi in Lagos. Lagos can buy the whole of it and a plant to do it. Come on, give me a break. Who are the poor? Are they not are the people that come to reap, or the people that you meet and impoverish? If we would change the way of doing business, I mean, Africa would be the richest continent from the investors on the continent. Of course, take everything you want to take. But why do you leave the people, the beggars and the poor, if really that is not ill intention? The world has to change. There can be no world that will say we're better off, where people are dying every day and some people are just being, living as if they're living in another planet. So we want to thank you, brother, for your time, for your spirit, for your work, for your engagement, for your advocacy. And we do hope that all of us are supporting and we are learning. I'm going to pick just this one last call, and then we would be closing this session. But before I pick your call, Kofi, hold on. I want to remind us that tomorrow we're going to be having a conversation with Dr. Tony Jaja. Probably also he's going to be accompanied by Usman Toure or Sir Clyde Rivers, who wants to share their perspective on the legacy of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda from the perspective of an ancestor that has transited. But like you were saying, what is it that we learn in these legacies? What is the good and what is the bad? And what should the young people take forward for the future of the Africa that we want? So, Kofi, over to you. Hello.
Hello, my dear sister. How are you?
Fine. I see you're looking so fresh. You abandoned us. I don't know what you've been doing around.
No. I didn't abandon you. I'm always with you. The team say it's a time. The system which I'm in now, it doesn't give me time for me to join you at the right time. That's
all right.
Why.
But I know you. It's all right. It's fine. It's fine. I know you're calling because Rutendo touched your stomach by saying that the president of Ghana, isn't it? Why are you calling now?
Not for that. Even though I have to, point him for this way because it's a foolish government what we have over there. So he said the right thing. But what it made me call right now is what I read from just last week about Neverland peoples. Now they apologize Africans that Africans must forgive them for the wrong things which them ancestors do to us. So what I want to ask Rutendo, or what I want for Shempa idea is, do you think that those Neverland peoples which is in South Africa right now are doing that bullshit which they are doing with the South Africans? They didn't apologize for that issue, and they actually apologize for them ancestors, what them ancestors did. So what do you think about that? Apologize which they asking for. Is it what I'm trying to ask?
Okay.
You get me the point.
Thank you. I hope you're going to call in tomorrow. Don't run away again. Thank you.
No.
All right. It's just a joke, brother. Thank you. Over to you, Rutendo. I know you've been talking about this hypocrisy, and the brother is asking, when they come to apologize about their ancestors, are they not still doing the same thing? What's the difference?
Yeah, I love the question that the brother asked, because an apology without restitution is nothing. 700 years, 600 and I think it's 568 years of oppression that has been undertaken to enrich the West, and is not being compensated by just being giving apologies, is an insult to Africans. It's the same way that the Germans offered 1.1 billion to the Herero people for their colonization of Namibia. It's an insult to the African people, considering that the very same Germans have paid $98 billion to the Jews for just 5 years of oppression. They didn't take their land. They didn't occupy the Jewish land. They did not colonize their country. They did not enslave Jews. They simply brought a Holocaust upon them, put them in prisons, and starved them. And all of a sudden, they deserve $98 billion US dollars. And then the Americans have given them another $143 billion US dollars to colonize Palestine. So I think it's an insult for them just to apologize to us for 568 years of crimes against humanity, genocide, bringing certain people to extinctions. African Indians, American Indians are extinct. The Aboriginals are extinct. The Quechua people and a lot of other people have been made extinct in South America by these vampirous people, and then they just come and apologize. In South Africa, the legacy we're seeing today, we are taking people like Jacob Zuma to task because of crimes not committed by Jacob Zuma, but crimes committed by the Dutch, people from the Netherlands, said to be one of the most civilized European countries that has benefited from theft. And many Africans fail to realize when we say that the West has benefited from pillaging Africa. But I'll give you a perfect example. England was the biggest economy and the only superpower in the world just 100 years ago. They lost their colonies and they've fallen from number 1 to number 8. I think they're even going out of the top 10 now. It has become a useless country ever since it lost its colony. And then we're still arguing as to whether these people benefited from colonizing our people. So I don't believe we should accept their apologies. They must pay reparations. And they must pay trillions of dollars of reparations. Right now, the world's wealth is said to be about 390, not $400 trillion. I think more than 60% of that probably needs to go to all the countries that used to be colonized by the West. In fact, probably 80%, because India alone says that it lost $45 trillion to English colonialism. So Africa has definitely lost more than that. So we need that back before we can accept any apologies. Because if we go with common law and international legal principle that was, or legal custom as they call it, the Jews were compensated for what they went through. The Germans themselves, who were the perpetrators of this crime, even got the Marshall Plan to rebuild their country from the war. The Marshall Plan meant that they were given close to $12 billion then, which is almost $200 billion today, and they were allowed to keep it and for it to be a revolving loan. And that revolving loan of the Marshall Plan was funded by African exploitation. Until today, the Marshall Plan's revolving loan is still going, and it has created millions of companies in Germany. And so the Germans are prospering not because of innovation, not because of science, as they say. They are prospering because of exploitation of Africa. Because if they were what they say they are, if whites were these innovative people, creative people, they would have never had a reason to run away from Europe. They would have simply innovated themselves to stay in Europe and not to go to Africa, America, and Asia to steal. They came to steal because their system was destructive and they didn't have the wealth. And they impoverished us in the process. We want our money back.
We want our money back. That's the closing remark with Rutendo. Brother Rutendo, when are we going to have you here? We want to have of course, you'll be having the show with Obina. We'll announce it when Obina is ready. And then, but we will still also have to have you here on a one-on-one. Let's talk about the sector of agriculture and what we can do together. The diaspora is really looking out also in Zimbabwe and other perspective around. So we know that you are the right man on spot to tell who has what, who can do what, and how you assist them, with consultancy, and also providing actually the real tools for them to get engaged in this. So yes, thank you, bro. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful pleasure to have you again, and just to listen to your voice and hear your perspectives, and actually the issues that you're putting out there. It is more than just right. Now, I see the chat is very, very active. Everyone is just like, we missed you so much. And yes, your incredible job or work is not going to go in vain. And for all of you that would reach out to Rutendo, you know where to find him. You don't know where to find him, you know where to find Pan-African Daily. And of course, he's gonna be yours. But it's not just about asking him again what he's been talking here. Please call Rutendo, or on the behalf of Rutendo, because you want to support the movement and his engagement, and we're ready. Just getting a contact or getting his numbers, that is not advisable, but it's about your support and the engagement of things that you need. Right? Time is money, and that's what we're saying. Another one last brother that has been long, Rutendo is coming here and bringing back all the people that that had run away from us, that were not interested in any other person, probably who came because of Rutendo. Some are Ghanaians, some are Zimbabweans, like this one, I think is Zimbabwe or whatever. But anyways, let us pick up the call. Now you're bringing back all the old school. Hello. Yeah, you're laughing because you know.
What can I say, my sister and my brother? What can I say? What can I say? What can I say? In fact, I'm elated because listen to my brother Rutendo. I always wish I can physically see him and just hug him, just squeeze him hard.
Buy him a ticket. Send him a ticket. It's easy.
Yeah. Most definitely. In fact, I don't know. I'm lost of words because what can I say? I'm totally lost. But the only thing I can say that it can come out from my mouth is that I love you, man. I really love you. You are my son. You understand? Because what you're doing, see, I don't know if everybody will be like you. Because I can tell you with all honesty that I have the spirit. See, I agree with the spirit you have. I have the same burning inside me. I don't want to talk, but I went home. I came last week, and what I saw, my brother, it's pathetic, man. Our people don't know anything. But what hurts me so much is that when you try to talk, try to give them a little bit of hint, some get angry, some actually get it, but most of them, they don't want to know. It's like they rather want to put you in a total shame. You understand? That hurts me more. That up to what level are we going to learn? Do we need to go down that we can't stand up before we will cry for helping hand to stand up whilst all our legs and all our joints are broken? Why do we do ourselves like this one? Why? Until when, brother? Until when are we going to stand up as Africans, as a human being? Sometimes I said to my own mother that we behave as if our Creator did not create us well. It looks like we don't have a brain. Because what goes on, if you understand, obviously not everybody can understand, but those who can understand will see that we act like animals. Maybe it's too harsh, but that's how it hurts. It hurts to see that, look, what is it? What is wrong with us? You can see. So why is it that we alone cannot learn from our mistakes? Why is it that we alone cannot learn from the past? Why is it that we alone still go back to the same shit over and over and over and over and over? Why? Why is the question? Do we have to take some people and put them in a furnace and burn them before we have a liberation? We can liberate ourselves. What do we need to do? In fact, it blows my mind. It makes me, in fact, all my eyebrows turn white. All my hair
Okay.
But people say maybe I'm trying to take African problem, but no. Well, if you understand, it had too much, my sister.
I know.
And my brother.
Thank you.
Anyway, agriculture, business, I'm in it.
Okay.
Agriculture, I'm in it.
All right.
So, but maybe you need to go and rest. So I rest, I guess. Yes, thank you.
No problem. When you be coming up for that topic, you're going to be involved. Okay. I know these are the staunch. Thank you, bro. Thank you. It's been a while. These are the staunch followers of Rutendo. I'm telling you. I mean, they've been here day and night. Now you're just bringing all of them back, and you can see your show more than 300 and on the other platforms live and steady, even though it's really late. And this is one of the show again that we've done more than 2 hours after in the last times, right? So it is really an honor to have you. I mean, and we need to have you on all the things. Just share. Tell us when you have a birthday or you have something, or like the brothers are saying, others are just willing to buy you a ticket and we just sit and hang around you. You're a very powerful, handsome, strong looking brother. I mean, it's not just hearing from your voice, but we also want to feel you around us, sit with us, right? So fine. Thanks so much, bro. Thanks so much. We will be having you again. I will reach out to you and let's take it further, isn't it?
Yeah, no, thanks, sis. Thanks for this opportunity. Sometimes I don't like to say the things that I have to say, but we have to say them to create the record. We have to say them to create our mistake, to fix our mistakes. We have to create a problem statement because too many ignorant people take sides without understanding the cost of the sides that they take. And I know that even many politicians themselves don't know what they're doing when they make some of the decisions they make. And that's why I have to do this very unpopular act of speaking the truth. You have to understand that tomorrow I'm still going to be walking in South Africa after saying this. I don't know what the response will be. Tomorrow I still have to pick up my phone in South Africa, in Zimbabwe. I criticize people in South Africa, I criticize people in Zimbabwe, I criticize people in Ghana, and I'm going to have to face those people. But I am willing to do it for the love of the country. I wish people would be able to advise me when I'm wrong. I wish when I write an article, people could tell me where the spelling errors are, because this is how we become better for Africa. And then just to answer the question this guy said is, why are we like this? Hitler said that it's a lack of knowledge, but it's also a lack of evolution, to understand that the only way that you can grow a race or even a species, which is the human species, is to self-sacrifice and to stop thinking about yourself for the collective. And the African has not learned that. Maybe it's the years of oppression, maybe it's the years of impoverishment and denial, but our individualism is destroying us. And that's what we need to end, so that we start sacrificing for the collective. Me speaking like this in a continent with individualistic people that want to continue to prosper at the expense of the majority, I'm risking my life. Me speaking against the Americans, the Westerners, the apartheid order, I'm risking my life, but I'm doing it for the collective. And sometimes you ask yourself, why would you sacrifice yourself for a collective that allowed Steve Biko to be killed, and they have not changed much since Steve Biko died? I believe that they can always be changed, because I'm a change that was caused by the sacrifice made by people like Biko. Maybe somebody else will take the fight forward. Thank you, Steve.
This is so deep, Rutendo. Nothing is going to happen to you. Nothing actually happened to us. Something went wrong. Like Rev Shock is always telling us, nothing is wrong with us Africans. Something happened to us. So we have to understand that we're dealing with too much trauma, and this is the healing time. And the only way to heal ourselves is for us to practice this Pan-Africanism in a format like you are doing, on a very daily practical things that, liberate us. And I think truth from our perspective, or truth from the way we see it, is also part of the healing. You cannot heal by hiding all those things and by keeping it, and then we want healing. Healing goes with addressing the past and then looking for a solution in the future. So I think Yes, brother, you're on the right track. And if anything should happen to you, then it was just that it has to happen to you. Anyway, all of us are going to die, whether we die through being whatever or just diseases or COVID. It's everyone would have to pass on. And whatever purpose you came here, then it is the purpose that we all are for. But none of your ancestors who brought you here, of the God of the Creator, who gave you even this bravery and this power to speak. You're just fulfilling exactly what you came for. And so we all are praying with you. We are all in unison for you. And your work is your work. Nobody can take it from you. Nobody can be Rutendo. Nobody can be the rock. So thank you so much, brother. Yeah.
Thank you, sis.
Yes, we'll get in touch with you and we wish you a very safe time out there and good night. We know people are not animals like they used to be any day. The world is also learning. I think it's not only us that is learning. The world is also learning to say tactics that never work will never work forever. You can't kill a whole everybody. Okay. So thank you. Thank you. Regards to your family. We all love you and we are together with you on this. Bye-bye. Good. So thank you all for watching. It's been a wonderful time out here with Rutendo. I mean, we missed him for so much. Just feeling his energy and being here. I hope most of us that wanted to understand this truth. What I like about this conversation or this presentation from his point of view is the fact that he actually hold everybody accountable. It's not only blaming the blame game of, oh, they did this, but who are you that are actually meddling to commit this? And and how do we hide out? So it's everything you do is going to catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you. It catches up even with whoever we call and doing this to you. It catches up with everybody. Look at the systems all in the world. And sometimes that's why we ask who actually loses, who wins. If you look at the history of us as Africans people, how many decades? And today, that's why I have the conviction, you have the conviction, nothing would happen to Africa. Nothing. The creator that created mankind and Africa and the ancestors and gave us that land, they would have done it 400 decades ago. Even if we say the second scramble is coming, the third, the fourth, the how many, Africa is going to be Africa. And nobody even would save it because the creator that created that space and make us Africans is the one. Now, if we look at the development, look at all the other countries, are they not having challenges? What is it that we really look at it and say, oh, they are better off than us? That is also one of the things that we need to change. If you look at the structures, it's just the good roads, the skyscrapers and this. Look at the psychological and the situation and the conditions of the living people. Now you begin to want to ask, what is actually happiness? What is the meaning of life to humanity? If you can't care for one another, what purpose does it save you to be a developed or the most powerful nation in the world when citizens all still go under the same mutual conditions? It is the same, be it in Africa, be it in the West. Nothing has changed in the life of humans. The only thing that changed is how we treat each other with love. All these infrastructures and whatever developments we're talking about, if we are not spiritually developed to know that a human being, nature, every element of the dimension belongs to one single creator, and no one single individual can say, I'm more powerful. You kill me today, tomorrow you die. So what is the essence? What is the essence at all? So Africans, don't be discouraged because you think that some people, oh, they did this to us. It's the same thing. It's the same thing everywhere. There's no condition that you see people, they're happy now and just say, we're fine. Others are just clothing and they just, hiding up all these things. But ask yourself, do a research on the happiness and the psychological health of the humans, and you compare it, and let's have that discussion. So I want to thank you. Be motivated, be empowered, be enriched to understand that nobody owns the right to you to live. They kill you tomorrow, they will die tomorrow. Some other person is going to take up the earth. Nobody is going to live for 200 years anymore, or 100 and something, if you even. And even if you get to that age, of what use are you, what use do you have to yourself? You just be a burden to others. So nothing is actually wrong with us. We need the unity, the love among one another. We need to talk about the challenge. We look at the solution and the way forward. And we need to understand that nobody has the power to change our destinies. God gave us already that power, and unity and love is what is going to take us there. We see us tomorrow. We're going to have this conversation with Dr. Tony Jaja, and then the others have not confirmed, but it's going to be about the legacy of Kenneth Kaunda, his former president. May his soul rest in peace, and we see us tomorrow. Good night to all of you. Bye-bye.